Chapter 571, The Battle Skill Heirloom of the Bai family. Leaving with haste from the Yun family, the young woman rode her Class 1 magical beast mount at great speeds down the street. Her body was in a weaker state than before since she had been struck by the head of the family. She had received no major injuries, but she was not a saint yet. Her body was not accustomed to taking such a blow, thus, it heavily impacted her condition, causing her face to pale. "I want her captured. You unfilial daughter, who are you to try and kill your own father?" The angry voice of her father exploded from behind. The fabric on his back was completely drenched in blood. He, along with several dozen soldiers, chased after her with great haste. They were unable to fly through the streets since they were congested, so they had trouble catching up to her. The Yun family didn't have many magical beasts to begin with, therefore, many of the soldiers could only rely on their legs to run. Only the head of the Yun family and his most loyal soldiers rode a mount. Both groups blazed down the streets. With both sides racing and crossing over several major streets, they managed to travel several kilometers away from the center of the city. By now, the father had already closed the distance from several hundred meters to just a few dozen. Seeing that her father was gaining on her, the daughter knew that she wouldn't be able to escape if this continued. With a moment's hesitation, she immediately turned into a nearby alleyway. "Wretched girl, don't waste your energy. You cannot escape from me. Hurry up and hand over the antidote," the father roared. His expression was panicked. He could tell the poison within his body was slowly coursing throughout it. The antidotes he had swallowed earlier weren't able to counteract the poison. The only solution left was to find the actual antidote. The woman completely ignored the words her father spat out. Urging her steed to run even faster, she finally came to a stop right in front of an inn. She threw herself down from the mount to run in. She knew that the person she was looking for was in this place. When she ran into the inn, the head of the Yun family and the other soldiers immediately came to a stop by the entrance. "Surround the inn and prevent that unfilial daughter of mine from escaping. You there, follow me in," the man commanded before storming into the inn with his soldiers. At the same time, Jian Chen and his group were gathered together within one of the rooms. Jian Chen, the three major clans of Fengyang City have lost plenty of their experts, but their clans still remain. "Do you think we should eradicate their clans entirely? After how they treated you 2 years ago, our strength now would be more than enough to make sure they pay retribution. We shouldn't let them off so easily, especially the Harito clan. Now that we've killed 2 of their Earth Saint Masters, they won't take that matter lying down. Even if they don't do anything now, they will, without a doubt, work against us in the future when the time is right. At the very least, we should cut off the Harito clan and burn the roots so that they will never rise up against us," Ming Dong proposed. "Wouldn't that be too cruel? It was only a single person that offended Jian Chen, and he's dead now. Why should we involve their clan? They're innocent in this," Tai Ta blurted out. Giving a thoughtful hum, Jian Chen replied, "That much is true. Burning the roots would prevent any future actions against us. The man that slighted me may be dead, but the hatred their clan possesses for me will not be so easily resolved. Since we've killed 2 of their stronger individuals, their hatred will be even deeper. Without a doubt they will bury their feelings and wait for a time to strike when optimal to do the most damage to us. If you think so, then we should take care of the Harito clan straight away after we leave Fengyang City," Ming Dong spoke. "There's no need to rush. Our current task at hand is to further develop our strength and wait until the Flame Mercenaries have established a decent scope of control. Soon, even the Harito clan will ask to join the Flame Mercenaries," Jian Chen responded. He was very much aware of the fact that killing 2 individuals would give plenty of trouble for him in the future, so it was best to get rid of the source straight away. Ming Dong hung his head in thought before realizing something. "Well then, how about this? Why don't we leave the Harito clan for now and have the Flame Mercenaries take care of them as practice? I have satisfied the grievances I had from my journey to this auction house 2 years ago. We should rest for the night and leave tomorrow morning for the next first-class city to gather some mercenaries. Jian Qin replied. Fine then, we'll return first. The illusionary flash is far too mysterious for me to comprehend in a single go anyways. Now that my level of comprehension has increased, I feel that I have a better chance of understanding it. Ming Dong nodded his head as he stood up from his chair. Jian Qin could only sigh when he heard him mention the illusionary flash. There was regret on his face. This battle skill had been profoundly deep, and was regretfully only usable with Saint Force. He was unable to use this battle skill since he bad no Saint Force, nothing more could be said about that. I wonder just when I will be able to use the chaotic force, and if I'll be able to use the chaotic force to use the illusionary flash. Jian Qin thought to himself. He knew that it would be a long journey until he was able to use the chaotic force due to the difficulty of cultivating it. His only path as of now was to gather ruler armaments and absorb the energy within them to refine them into chaotic force. However, it would take a tremendous amount of time to accomplish such a task. A single wisp of chaotic force was equivalent to the strength of a saint ruler. Even if you were to refine monster cores into chaotic force, it would take a sea of them for a single strand. Jian Qin, you should rest up as well. We'll be taking our leave. Yu spoke softly to Jian Qin as they all stood up to leave. As soon as Ming Dong opened the door, a bright red blur shot into the room with staggering footsteps before collapsing to the floor. Jian Qin and Ming Dong strangely looked at the sudden arrival that was this red-skirted young woman. At a glance, they recognized her as the young daughter of the Yun family from a week ago. Hey, what on earth are you doing barging into our rooms like that? Ming Dong asked with bemusement. When she stood back up onto her feet, her face was exuberantly pale and her hair had been frazzled from the wind. Such a disheveled figure like the one she had now was completely different than from the graceful figure she had back then. The eyes of the young woman shot straight to Jian Qin with a hard-to-detect hint of panic and apprehension. Hesitating for only a fraction of a moment, she steeled her nerves and said, "My lords, I know that you are all very strong people. I have a matter that I hope that you will be able to help me with. If you help me destroy the Yun family, then I will repay you in kind with an Earth-tier battle skill." Although she looked calm on the outside, her voice had betrayed the nervousness she felt in her heart. Ming Dong observed the young woman with a pondering glance. "If I remember correctly, you're the young daughter of the Yun family." How queer, the daughter of the Yun family asking us to eradicate the very same family. Just what type of herb did you mix together and take? You said you have an Earth-tier battle skill, how could we believe such a thing, or did you take us to be 3-year-old children? Growing more anxious, she pressed on, "It doesn't matter if you believe me or not. The battle skill I mention is true. As long as you help me destroy the Yun family, I will hand it over to you." "So I see, you wretched girl, you've been hiding secrets from me all this time." Suddenly, a furious roar sounded from outside the room as the head of the Yun family and his strong-looking soldiers came into the room. His eyes landed upon Jian Qin and the others. While they all looked young to him, the man knew that they couldn't be taken lightly if his daughter had spoken to them in such a manner. "My lords, I am the lord of Fengyang City's Yun family. This girl here has gone mad and tried to kill her own father. Her words cannot be trusted. Whatever Earth-tier battle skill it is something she fabricated and cannot be believed. I'll be taking her back home. If we have bothered you with this scene, I give my utmost apologies." The man politely explained to Jian Qin. It had only taken a moment for him to devise a plan on what to say. Ever since his daughter had spoken, he could already tell that the gathering of people in this room were not people he could afford to offend. With that, the head of the Yun family turned to the soldiers outside the room. "What are you loafing around for? Hurry up and escort my daughter back home." "Yes." The soldiers responded before moving to grab her. As soon as their feet crossed into the room, Dugu Feng had immediately stepped forward to block them from entering. With an intimidating glare, he asked, "Out. Who said you could walk into this room as you please?" Startled, the head of the Yun family was further convinced that these youths could not be offended at all costs. Yes. We will not enter the room without your express approval. If we may please implore you to allow us to escort my mad daughter home, we will avoid troubling you all any longer. Jian Chen's eyes stared calmly at the young woman. Miss, if you may please leave. Despair immediately overcame the young woman's face. She knew that whether or not she would survive today was completely dependent on Jian Chen's assistance. She knew that returning to the Yun family would mean eternal imprisonment for her now that her battle skill was known. Pleading even harder now, she said, I beg of you to help me. My advanced Earth tier battle skill is yours in return. The head of the Yun family was ecstatic to hear that it was an advanced Earth tier battle skill. Quickly schooling his emotions, he said, Crazy girl. My lords, please ignore what my daughter is saying. She doesn't have any battle skills at all, pay no attention to her. He wanted nothing more than to rush up to stuff her mouth to prevent her from talking anymore, but Dugu Feng, who was blocking the entryway, had intimidated him into inaction. If you had an Earth tier battle skill, then why didn't you go seek out one of the other powers in Fengyang City to help do your bidding? I would imagine they would all be more than willing to help for an Earth tier battle skill. Jian Chen inquired. There was never a chance in the past, and I was never sure whether or not an Earth tier battle skill would be enough to help me. Now that I am at my wit's end, there is no other path to take. I beg of you to believe me. If you can help me, then I will impart my mother's family's battle skill, the Miracle Water of Bai. This is an invaluable battle skill, I'm sure. The woman desperately pleaded. The antidote was on her person. Hence, if she were to be captured and sent back home, then she would never be able to take revenge for her mother. Not only that, her own body would be endlessly tortured for the battle skill, and she had no doubts that her own father would go through any lengths to obtain it. Upon mention of the battle skill, Jian Chen's face revealed shock. His eyes immediately lit up with a bright glare as he shot straight up from his seat. Astonished, he honed straight on her as he questioned, What did you say? The Miracle Water of Bai, is that right? This battle skill had immediately brought forth a surge of emotions that he could not quell. It was by no means an unfamiliar battle skill to him. In fact, it was the battle skill that was passed down from each person in the Bai family. Chapter 572, The Identity of Bai Lian. 1. Such a major reaction from Jian Chen caused everyone in the room to jump in surprise, especially the ones that knew Jian Chen most, like Ming Dong, Yu Yu, and Dugu Feng. This was the very first time they had witnessed Jian Chen react in such a way, so they were all flabbergasted at his expression, especially since it was only an Earth tier battle skill. Jian Chen, what's wrong with this Miracle Water of Bai? The limpid eyes of Yu Yu observed Jian Chen as she inquired with a soft voice. It was very melodic to hear, like the song of a songbird. Ming Dong and Dugu Feng looked at Jian Chen curiously as well. If a mere Earth tier battle skill could elicit such a reaction from Jian Chen, then surely there was more to the Miracle Water of Bai than what they had initially thought. They had not been the only ones that were shocked. Even the young woman herself had been startled by Jian Chen's reaction. Dumbstruck, she could only stand there in ignorance, wondering what she had done wrong. Growing even more nervous, the head of the Yun family glowered at his daughter and boomed, You crazy girl, don't speak such a tremendous lie. How could you even possibly think that you could lie to such intelligent men like them? Hurry up and come back home with me like a good child. The man was very worried that Jian Chen and the others would seriously believe that she had a battle skill and would interfere. Therefore, he decided to go for broke and charged into the room to grab her. This was his final attempt at trying to take her away to suppress her secret. Dugu Feng did not stop the man from entering this time, allowing him to charge into the room without a problem. He tried to grab at the woman. However, Jian Chen's eyes flashed dangerously as he growled, Who let you enter this room, scram? With a wave of his right hand, a wave of energy from the world burst forth and slammed squarely into the man's body. The head of the Yun family was only a primary great saint master, and thus possessed no defenses against Jian Chen's strike. Without even being able to react, his body was thrown back from the tremendous strike and into the wall behind him. He had slammed so hard into the wall that there was a crater from where he smashed through it. A splurt of blood could be seen flying out from his mouth. Jian Chen's control over the energy was exceptionally refined. He had only struck the head of the Yun family himself without any energy splashing over into the yin itself. The tremendous might from the blow had caused the soldiers of the Yun family and even the daughter to be terrified. Everyone could only whip their heads back to Jian Chen with paling faces of terror. As a primary great saint master, someone like the head of the Yun family could only be considered as a mediocre person within Fengyang City. However, even he would be considered as one of the stronger mediocre people. Therefore, when a person like him was sent flying without resistance by a youth no older than 20-something, everyone could only look on in shock. With pointed eyes, Jian Chen stared down the young woman and urged her on, "Do you really have the miracle water of Bai?" She didn't know why Jian Chen was so concerned about the miracle water of Bai, but his strength had frightened her so much that she could only nod in silence. "Ming Dong, hand me a piece of parchment and a brush," he asked Ming Dong. "Right." Without delay, Ming Dong turned around to walk out and retrieve both items Jian Chen had asked for from the innkeeper. Putting both parchment and brush onto a table, Jian Chen told the woman, "Write down all that you know about the miracle water of Bai here." Hearing the non-negotiable order of Jian Chen, the woman hesitated for only a moment before finally responding, "If I write this down, then will you agree to my request? Will you destroy the Yun family and kill the murderer of my mother?" "I promise." This time, Jian Chen hadn't hesitated to answer. Having received Jian Chen's promise, the young woman couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. She knew that this would go against her mother's wishes when she was told to never give it to any outsider, but with the situation as it was, there had been no other choice. Quickly putting the brush to the parchment, the young woman had soon written down a complete battle skill for Jian Chen. Taking the word-filled parchment into his hands, Jian Chen began to look at the inner contents. The longer he read, the more thunderstruck he felt. The miracle water of Bai was not unknown to Jian Chen since it was the battle skill that was handed down from generation to generation in the Bai family. Once, his uncle Bai Dao and mother Bai Yuntian had wanted to gift him the battle skill as well, but he was no longer capable of using saint force as a whole since he had lost his saint weapon. Furthermore, he knew that this miracle water of Bai was separated into 3 stages. The first was a human tier, the second was an earth tier, and the third was a heaven tier. From what the woman had written down, it fully depicted the first and second stage of the miracle water of Bai. Word for word, it was a perfect match to what Bai Dao and his mother had once told him. This was far too much for Jian Chen to believe. Slowly putting down the piece of paper, Jian Chen looked at the young woman seriously. "Tell me, where did you learn of this miracle water of Bai?" "This was what my mother told me. Is there a problem with it?" She answered with a puzzled expression. "What was the name of your mother?" When Jian Chen asked her, the young woman began to think hard, searching the deepest parts of her mind where memories of her kind and caring mother were kept. She couldn't help but begin to tear up from these nostalgic but painful memories as she sobbed out, "My mother was called Bai Yunhai." As if struck by lightning, Jian Chen's entire body began to shake as the parchment with the battle skill fell from his hands. In disbelief, Jian Chen looked at the young woman in despondence. "Bai Yunhai. Bai Yunhai. Your mother had the surname of Bai." Ming Dong and the others stared in confusion at Jian Chen. They didn't know what had happened to the Bai family, and didn't understand the relationship Jian Chen had with them. Naturally, they wouldn't know why Jian Chen would be so taken aback when he heard that the young woman's mother had the last name of Bai. "Brother, are you okay?" Ming Dong couldn't help but ask in concern. As Jian Chen was his brother, the mood of Jian Chen would influence him as well. Quashing down the surge of emotions that was assaulting his mind, Jian Chen slowly shook his head. "I'm fine." With that, his eyes turned back to fixedly stare at the young woman. In this single moment, the expression in his eyes drastically changed. "What is your name?" Jian Chen asked with a surprisingly warm and kind voice. "My name is Yun Lian," she replied. Her bright eyes stared curiously at Jian Chen as if confused about the look Jian Chen was giving her. She was a clever person and could sense the change in Jian Chen's voice, but it confounded her on why it had happened in the first place. "Your mother has already died, correct?" Jian Chen asked. Upon mention of her mother, Yun Lian's eyes began to well up with tears once more before giving a grieved nod of her head. Sighing, Jian Chen replied, "So your mother never told you about the Bai family?" Yun Lian looked blankly at Jian Chen before shaking her head. She had not a single iota of knowledge relating to the Bai family. "How did your mother die?" Jian Chen asked one word at a time, with each pause growing even more cold than before. A furious glare emerged from Yun Lian's eyes as she tightly clenched her teeth. "My mother was beaten to death by the head of the Yun family. He is a beast in the shape of a man. For the sake of learning the miracle water of Bai from my mother, he tried to beat it out of her. But my mother was unwilling. Her body had already been weak, and after such an inhuman beating, she was unable to endure it any more. She left the world." Yun Lian burst into tears at this point. "My mother's death was far too cruel. I must take revenge for the sake of my mother. Her murderer is no man, but a beast in disguise." Although the head of the Yun family was her father, Yun Lian felt no emotions for him besides hatred. Jian Chen's fist had tightened so much that the knuckles in his hand released a series of crackling sounds in symbolization of his anger. "Dugu Feng, bring the head of the Yun family here right now," Jian Chen growled. Dugu Feng gave a deep stare at Jian Chen before turning around to leave. Quickly bringing back the injured man, he tossed the man unceremoniously onto the ground. The head of the Yun family had been grievously injured after receiving a single strike from Jian Chen. Even now, he found himself without the energy to stand back up. An Earth Saint Master wouldn't be able to take the strike of a Heaven Saint Master, let alone a Great Saint Master. "You beast! I'll definitely make sure you'll be buried with my mother." Yun Lian immediately kicked her father's head with hatred. After carefully hiding her emotions for so long, she had finally found an opportunity to take revenge. The violent hate she felt was now spilling out all at once. No one in the room stopped her. They decided to watch from the sidelines. The treatment that her mother had suffered by the hands of this man for a battle skill was more than enough for them all to be filled with anger as well. After a moment, Yun Lian finally grew tired. Falling to the ground, she began to cry, tears streaming down. No one could understand her mind, and no one could understand the torment and pain she felt. On one hand, the head of the Yun family was her father, and on the other hand, it was he that had killed her mother. Confronted with such a cruel choice, it couldn't possibly be a light situation for anyone else to take. Chapter 573, The Identity of Bai Lian, 2. Yun Lian remained sprawled on the ground for some time before she finally cried herself to exhaustion. Her tears ceased, and the only thing left was pain. A sigh escaped from Jian Chen's mouth as he stared at Yun Lian. Turning to Dugu Feng, he said, "Escort the man down, but make sure he doesn't run away." Dugu Feng sensed that there had to be some sort of special connection between Yun Lian and Jian Chen. With the hatred between Yun Lian and the head of the Yun family, he decided not to ask about it for now. He nodded his head in a serious manner. "Very well. I'll look over him carefully." The man was picked up by Dugu Feng like a clump of mud, and carried out of the room. Jian Chen hesitated for a moment as he watched Yun Lian. Finally, he said, "Come with me to the Jessen kingdom." She had not expected to hear the words that had come out of Jian Chen's mouth. The ones about going to the Jessen kingdom, and thus, she was shocked as a result. Looking suspiciously at Jian Chen, she asked, "Why should I go with you to the Jessen kingdom?" "To confirm something. Perhaps you'll find family there," Jian Chen replied. All sorts of emotions were running through his mind at that moment. Who would have thought that a person he met just a few days ago would be a member of the Bai family? My family? Yun Lian whispered for a moment before shaking her head in sorrow. No, I have no family left. The only one I had was my mother, but even she is gone now. My father is no man, but a beast. He isn't my rightful father. I'll make sure to kill him by my own hand to satisfy my mother's revenge. Yun Lian bitterly cried out. Slowly walking to Yun Lian, Jian Chen said once more, come with me to the Jessen kingdom. There is one thing I must confirm. It relates to your mother. To my mother? What could that be? Yun Lian's eyes lit up as if her interest had been piqued. I don't have the words to say it right now. Wait until you come to the Jessen kingdom, you will understand then. Jian Chen explained in a serious tone. She hesitated. This matter was surprisingly related to her mother, so she couldn't be indifferent to it. After a moment's hesitation, she finally nodded her head in agreement. Fine, I will go with you to the Jessen kingdom. Then, let us go right now. Jian Chen impatiently responded. Turning to Ming Dong and the others, he said, I will return to the Jessen kingdom first. Wait for me here until I get back. If anything happens, break this jade stone. With that, Jian Chen handed a piece of jade to Ming Dong. This was an especially precious jade stone on the Tianyuan continent that would cause its sister stone to break apart at the same time when crushed, no matter how far the distance was in between the two. As such, it was considered a surefire method of signaling. The group knew that this situation held more to it than they had thought. It wasn't something they could even imagine, so they decided not to ask for now. Taking the jade stone from Jian Chen, Ming Dong replied to him in serious manner, Brother, come back quickly. Nodding his head, Jian Chen gave his farewells to everyone before walking back to Yun Lian. Is there anything else you have left to do here? If not, then we'll be on our way. There's nothing. But we're a long way from the Jessen kingdom, shouldn't we prepare for our travel? Yun Lian asked. No need, we'll be there very quickly. Jian Chen answered. Holding on to Yun Lian's arm, Jian Chen waved his hand. With a single thought, he enveloped them both with a bubble of wind. Before she could even react, Yun Lian and Jian Chen immediately shot from the room into the sky. Like a bright burst of azure light, they ascended into the sky at a lightning-quick speed. So fast that the bystanders in the streets had been unable to make out what it was. The sudden sensation of being shot into the sky had frightened Yun Lian so much that she had cried out and turned pale in terror. When she recovered, she could only hear the wind streaming through her ears and blowing her hair everywhere. Under her feet, Fengyang City had been reduced to a very small area. The previously giant city was now completely viewable in its entirety. Even the throngs of people on the streets had been reduced to the size of ants with no distinguishing characteristics between each one. Stunned at the sight of the still rapidly diminishing city, Yun Lian was silent for a long while. At that current moment, she was terribly frightened and could not keep her heart in check. It did not take long for Fengyang City to disappear into the horizon underneath the two. The scenery of the rest of the world gradually grew fainter before a plume of clouds started to obscure the ground from sight. Jian Chen had brought Yun Lian over a sea of clouds. Nothing else could be seen but the whiteness from the tops of the clouds. After what seemed like a long while, Yun Lian finally regained her ability to think coherently. With eyes wide open, she stared in disbelief at the young but handsome face of Jian Chen with one hand over her mouth in shock. Yoyuyura, a heaven saint master. A tidal wave of emotions overcame Yun Lian's mind at that point. A heaven saint master was among the strongest on the continent. On the power structure, they were nearly at the top, and would be heads above anyone else if put in any random kingdom. Even a king would have to treat them as majestic and illustrious entities with most haste. Their very existences were the same as being compared to an entire kingdom. The rise or fall of a kingdom was completely dependent on where the heaven saint master was in the equation. Yun Lian hadn't thought it was possible that the youth right next to her would actually be a heaven saint master. In the eyes of a commoner, men like these were godlike. Even after that, when the 10 heaven saint masters from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom attacked, they were forced back by the clan and had lost several of their members as a result. Such a battle had further increased the Changyang clan's name. They deserved to be recognized as the strongest in the Jessen Kingdom. Completely replacing the Huayun sect as the strongest power, not even the royal family could stop them. The extremely high status that the Changyang clan had obtained couldn't even be compared to the Yun family, who was insignificant in Fengyang city. They were ants in comparison to the 3 major clans in that city, but similarly, those 3 clans would be insects in comparison to the Changyang clan, who was already heads above the royal family in might. Yun Lian had never expected to see herself stand outside the gates to the Changyang clan. This was a clan that she regarded favorably. Hurriedly pulling at Jian Chen's robes, she said with worry, "This is the Changyang clan. Why did you bring me here? Are you sure we didn't fly to the wrong place?" Smiling, Jian Chen replied, "Don't worry, there's no problems here. Follow me." With that, Jian Chen pulled Yun Lian through the doors. Upon Jian Chen's entrance, the 2 soldiers guarding the entryway had snapped to salute with the utmost amount of respect they could muster. As Jian Chen grew closer, the 2 of them bowed down at the same time. "We pay our respects to the 4th master." The loud shouts of the 2 frightened the timid Yun Lian, who was right beside Jian Chen. Suddenly, her mind registered what had been said, which caused her to snap her head back to Jian Chen. "4th master? Are you the famous 4th master of the Changyang clan, Changyang Xiangtian?" Chapter 574, The Identity of Bai Lian, 3. Yun Lian stared at Jian Chen with wide-open eyes of shock. Changyang Xiangtian, the 4th master of the Changyang clan, was a name that practically everybody in this region had heard about. He was an idol that practically every youth worshipped and strived to be. Not only was he a heaven saint master, he was also the imperial protector of the Jessen Kingdom. Each title he owned was more than enough for everyone to see him as an entity worthy of respect. These 2 titles were as good as halos that enveloped his entire person. Therefore, every youth recognized him as a god that overlooked the country from his domain, and nobody could encroach upon that domain. Jian Chen smiled when he saw the astonished look on Yun Lian's face. "Come inside then." He spoke as he led the still surprised Yun Lian inside the manor. "So you were the 4th master of the Changyang clan, Changyang Xiangtian. I should have realized that. Aside from the 4th master of the clan, who else could possibly be a heaven saint master at such an age?" Yun Lian muttered as she looked at Jian Chen with eyes of adoration. The newly established Changyang Manor's architecture was beautiful. If the old building was night, then the new building was day. Even the interior had become far more imposing. No matter where one looked, a squadron of guards could be seen walking about as they patrolled the grounds with diligence. The pride of even the soldiers could not be contained on their faces. To them, being the guards of the Changyang clan was an unbelievable honor that even their ancestors would be proud of. It also went without saying that the 4th master of the Changyang clan would be the person they respected the most. All Jian Chen had to do was walk on over and every guard would immediately bow their backs with the utmost respect. Walking through the compound, Yun Lian continued to turn her head at every corner to inspect the scenery with great curiosity. All sorts of emotions ran through her mind in violent waves. The Changyang clan was a clan that was too high for her to reach, even if it was just her eyes that touched it. She never expected to be able to personally visit their compound. There were no further obstructions for either of the 2 as they walked to the room of Jian Chen's mother, Bai Yuntian. Quickly, Jian Chen walked to her door. The guards and maids stationed there bowed down in a hurry. "We pay our respects to the 4th master." "Is my mother inside?" Jian Chen asked the 2 maids. "My lady is currently inside resting, 4th master," one of the maids respectfully answered. After the maid had spoken, the doors suddenly opened to reveal the white-robed Bai Yuntian. When she saw Jian Chen, her eyes lit up with excitement. Xiang'er, when did you come back? Why did you not send a message to your mother earlier? There was a kind and loving tone to her voice. She truly loved this child of hers, and she was so proud of him, especially with his many accomplishments. Curiously, Bai Yuntian looked at the graceful Bai Yuntian. Is this Changyang Xiangtian's mother? Strange, why does she look similar to my mother? Jian Chen felt warm from the loving eyes his mother used on him. He smiled in return. Mother, I actually came back for a rather important matter. Let us go inside your room first. Leading Yun Lian into the room, Jian Chen and Bai Yuntian walked over to the table meant for receiving guests, and sat down there. As soon as the three sat down, Bai Yuntian couldn't help but ask, Xiang'er, who might this young lady be? Even as she was speaking, Bai Yuntian was already pouring a cup of tea for the two to drink with a benevolent and motherly hand. There was a rather uncomfortable look in Jian Chen's eyes as he looked at Yun Lian. Mother, she is called Yun Lian, a citizen from the Blue Wind Kingdom, but her mother is someone I believe you might recognize. Oh. Whom might that be? I have always lived within the Changyang manor since my marriage. There aren't many that I know. Bai Yuntian gently laughed. Jian Chen hesitated for a brief moment before attentively looking back to his mother. Mother, do you happen to know a person named Bai Yunhai? Clatter. As soon as that name was mentioned, the teapot in Bai Yuntian's hand fell to the table. It spilled the tea water inside all over the table. Not even taking notice of the fact that her clothes were slowly getting wet from the tea water, Bai Yuntian stared at Jian Chen with piercing eyes. She questioned with a quavering voice, what did you say? Xiang'er, have you seen my younger sister Yunhai? Is she still alive? Where is she? Bai Yuntian's voice grew more and more frantic. Seeing such a large reaction from her, Jian Chen was able to confirm the guess in his mind. Yun Lian's mother was indeed a member of the Bai family. It would also appear that the relationship between her and his mother was extremely close. Yun Lian clearly heard each and every word from Bai Yuntian, but the meaning behind her words knocked her for a loop. From the very start, she couldn't possibly guess just what sort of relationship there was between her mother and the Changyang clan. A mental sigh escaped from Jian Chen. He knew that Bai Yuntian would feel anguished when she learned that Bai Yunhai had already passed on. Mother, Yun Lian is Bai Yunhai's daughter. She is also in possession of our Bai family's miracle water of Bai. Jian Chen explained in serious tone. Bai Yuntian's eyes honed in on Yun Lian as if to study the details of her face. Slowly walking up to her, Bai Yuntian tenderly took hold of Yun Lian's hands. She softly said, so you were the daughter of my younger sister? Yes. Yes, you look quite similar to her when she was young. Lianer, tell your aunt quickly. Where is your mother? Has she been well? The words, aunt, felt very foreign to Yun Lian, and her mind went blank as a result. The fourth lady of the Changyang clan and the mother of Changyan Xiangtian was her aunt? This sudden development had caused her to stiffen up into silence, unable to speak. Bai Yuntian looked at Yun Lian with a gentle and warm light as if she was regaling her like she was her own daughter. Lianer, tell your auntie. Where is your mother? Is she doing well? She asked once more, tears springing forth from her eyes. As soon as she heard mention of her mother, Yun Lian couldn't stop the stinging tears of pain from welling up in her eyes. As they streamed down her cheeks, she let out a whimper, my mother has already passed on. The expression on Bai Yuntian's face immediately froze in disbelief. Momentarily losing her voice, she stuttered, what? Yunhai has, she. Bai Yuntian's feet gave way to her body, causing her to stagger and fall. Mother, careful. Jian Chen cried out in alarm before quickly moving to his mother's side. Gingerly supporting Bai Yuntian back to her stool, he looked on in concern at his mother's pained face. He tried to console her, Mother, please don't feel too hurt, this matter happened a long time ago. Tears of grief sprang from her eyes like a fountain. Bai Yuntian's previous elation had instantaneously turned into anguish as she sobbed. Liener, tell your auntie. How did your mother die? Yun Lien recalled the whole story for Bai Yuntian to hear. When she heard how Bai Yunhai had been beaten to death by the head of the Yun family for the battle skill, Bai Yuntian became even more grieved. She couldn't help but bitterly cry. Yunhai, my sister. Your death was a wretched one. Blame your useless older sister. If I had known earlier, then you wouldn't have had to suffer such misery. Bai Yuntian wailed in anguish. Auntie, did you know my mother? Yun Lien managed to ask a question through her tears. Liener, your mother was my favorite sister. We were from the same Bai family, and that means your grandfather and my father were one and the same. But ever since the calamity that befell our Bai family, many of our relatives have been killed off. Even your grandfather was killed. All that was left was my elder brother and I. The two of us had thought that we were the only ones left. Never did I imagine that Yunhai managed to escape as well. It is to my regret that I learned about this too late, otherwise I would never have let Yunhai suffer so much. Bai Yuntian could only feel regret when she thought about how Yun Lien's mother had been beaten to death. She couldn't possibly imagine just how much her younger sister had suffered under the hands of someone so inhumane. Sister Yunhai has suffered for far too long. I will make sure that her vengeance will be served by killing that beast of a man. Bai Yuntian's eyes radiated a furious light as she angrily spoke, then does that mean you're really my aunt? Chapter 575, A New Family Member. The sudden introduction of a younger cousin made Jian Chen feel quite complex. He wasn't sure if he was happy or worried. Yet, Jian Chen felt like rejoicing over his decision to not drive out Yun Lien from his room in the inn. If he had, then Yun Lien would have definitely suffered at the hands of her father, who would have done all that he could to extract the battle skill from her. If he was willing to treat his wife that way, he would treat his daughter in a similar fashion. The Yun family was a small one after all, and an earth-tier battle skill was far too important. Yun Lien's mother had most likely wanted no pressure to befall her daughter, so she had never told her a single thing about the Bai family. Until Yun Lien had met Jian Chen, she had never known the true identity of her mother. The demise of Bai Yunhai had given Bai Yuntian a tremendous amount of grief, but the fact that her daughter was still alive gave her some solace. Her treatment of Yun Lien would be the same as if she was taking care of her own son. Although Yun Lien was not her own flesh and blood, Bai Yuntian would treat her as if she was with all the love and care she possessed. Afterward, Bai Yuntian slowly started to explain the history of the Bai family to Yun Lien so that she could understand why her mother had never told her anything about her past. What Yun Lien couldn't believe was that her deceased mother was once the direct descendant of a powerful family. The three of them remained within the room for more than 2 hours, giving them all plenty of time to recover from any residual grief. Xiang'er, treat her as you would your sister. With your power, you must ensure that you protect her. Don't let your cousin suffer any more. She has already suffered enough. Bai Yuntian made a request to Jian Chen. Jian Chen nodded with a serious but honest expression as he pledged, Mother, don't you worry. I will definitely protect Yun Lien. I won't let her feel any more grievances. Yun Lien's mind was sent into a flux once more when she heard Jian Chen's words. She felt as if she was in a dream that was far too mystical to even be a dream. In the span of 4 hours, her identity had experienced a tremendous transformation. This to her was something that she had a hard time stomaching. The imperial protector of the Jessen kingdom, Changyang Xiangtian, was the person she had regarded the most. However, he was a figure she could only look at and not touch. Now, he was suddenly her older cousin, and he had even pledged to protect her from any harm or sorrow. Yun Lien really felt as if she had suddenly been transported into a dream world. Softly pulling at Yun Lien's hand, Bai Yuntian said, Liener, your father treated your mother and you inhumanely. Forsake your last name of Yun and return to your roots as a member of Bai. Starting from today, you should take on the surname of Bai. Call yourself Bai Lien. You will be a member of the Changyang clan, and will have nothing more to do with the Yun family. Hesitating for the longest time, Yun Lian finally nodded her head before replying meekly, "Auntie, I understand. But wouldn't the other members of the Changyang clan see me as an outsider?" There was concern on her face. A faint smile appeared on Bai Yuntian's face. Good, you will now go by the name Bai Lian. Liener, you needn't worry about a thing. With your cousin, no one will dare bully you. You don't even need to worry about the other members from the Changyang clan. From the outside, it would seem that the power of the clan resides within the master of the household or the abdicated elders. In reality, it is your cousin that holds all of the power. Not a single person would dare ignore his words. Even the king of the Jessen kingdom is no exception. Once more, Bai Lian felt shocked at Bai Yuntian's words before turning to Jian Chen. She knew that Jian Chen held supreme status within the Jessen kingdom, but she didn't think that his status would be the same within the clan itself, especially if he reigned over the family head and the elders. Pulling Bai Lian up, Bai Yuntian said, "Liener, it's getting late. Why don't we go eat a meal? I can introduce you to my husband and Chang Bai. Given some time, your auntie will take you to the imperial palace to see your uncle. Your uncle works as the captain commander of the imperial palace, so unless there is something important, he won't come to visit." Hearing that her uncle was the captain commander of the Jessen kingdom, Bai Lian could really cement the fact that in a short few hours, her status had made a world-turning change. Being the golden daughter to the Yun family couldn't even compare. Yet, this change had been too sudden. She found it hard to react. If my mother had known that auntie was alive and well, then perhaps she wouldn't have died. Bai Lian thought to herself. Afterward, Jian Chen and his mother led Bai Lian to the dining halls for a meal. At the table, Bai Lian came across the family head and his other wives. Bai Yuntian revealed Bai Lian's identity to them, but she had not go in depth with the matters relating to the Bai family. She only revealed that Bai Lian was the daughter of her long-lost sister. Everyone was receptive to Bai Lian without a single objection. Everything was all due to the outstanding son of Bai Yuntian after all. The meal was exuberantly cheerful, and Changyang Ba, Ling Long, and Yu Fengyan treated Bai Lian very amiably. The only one that acted unnaturally was third aunt Bai Yushuang. The third aunt was someone that Jian Chen didn't even feel like greeting nowadays. Since his childhood, she had always objected to him and fought him over everything. When he had just returned to the Changyang clan, the third aunt had exploded to the point of being unable to stand him. If not for the fact that she was his aunt, Jian Chen wouldn't have forgiven her. After the meal, Bai Yuntian led Bai Lian to her very own room while Jian Chen walked by himself to his own building in the compound to rest. Night quickly gave way to day. In the morning, Jian Chen said his farewells to Changyang Ba before taking Bai Yuntian and Bai Lian into the air. They headed away from the manor toward the Blue Wind Kingdom. Bai Yuntian harbored a very deep hatred for the one that had killed her younger sister. Without listening to anyone, she wanted Jian Chen to bring her to the Blue Wind Kingdom, so she take revenge. Unable to compromise, Jian Chen could only look helplessly from the side before agreeing to take her to the Blue Wind Kingdom. After several hours of flight, Jian Chen returned to the same inn in Fengyang City. At that moment, Ming Dong, Yu Yu, Tai Ta, and Dugu Feng were all stepping out from the inn. When they saw that Jian Chen had quickly returned, they were excited to see him. When their eyes landed on Bai Yuntian beside him, they looked at her in bewilderment. "Ah, mother-in-law, what brings you here?" Yu Yu asked the white-robed but graceful Bai Yuntian a question from her surprise. Bai Yuntian smiled and exchanged several words of greeting to Yu Yu before turning back to Jian Chen. With impatience, she said, "Xianger, where is the murderer of my younger sister?" Turning to Dugu Feng, Jian Chen commanded, "Bring out the head of the Yun family." Soon enough, the thin and sallow figure of the head of the Yun family was brought out by Dugu Feng. When she saw the killer of her sister, Bai Yuntian was unable to maintain her composure. Thus, she immediately started to kick at the man with fury. "You immoral beast! Sister Yunhai was undoubtedly a treasure to behold by you, yet you failed to cherish the treasure that was my sister. Even worse, you beat her to death. I will make you pay for that crime with your life. Bai Yuntian wailed in anguish as she furiously beat the man. When she thought back to her closest younger sister Shi and how she had been killed by this man, she could only feel anguish. Bai Yuntian's actions caused Ming Dong, Yu Yu, Dugu Feng, and Tai Ta to look on with wide eyes and open mouths. Absolutely bewildered, they could only stare at her and then at each other, but not a single one of them knew what to do or say. The still mourning Yun Lian was unable to stop herself as well. With both feet, she continued to kick at the head of her father while crying incessantly. Stop! Lianer, I am your father. I may have done wrong with your mother, but you cannot treat me this way. I am your father, your family. Your father has done wrong, your father wishes to apologize. Please forgive your father. If you don't give your father the antidote, your father will die from this poison. He cried out with his head on the ground. With his body extremely battered and the poison having already taken root, he had lost the most basic of motor functions in his body. The only way he would survive now would be if his daughter gave him the antidote. You aren't fit to be my father. I don't have a father that is as cruel as you. From here on out, I forsake the last name of Yun and will take on the surname Bai. Bai Lian howled with tears. After beating the man soundly for a moment, the two women finally stopped to catch their breaths. Lianer, take your auntie to see your mother's grave. Bai Yuntian commanded. Nodding, Bai Lian took the group away from the inn while Dugu Feng was once more put in charge of guarding the head of the Yun family. Quickly, the group arrived within a small grotto outside Fengyang City. The tomb of Bai Yunhai was rather simple with a small mound and a tombstone that was about half the height of a person. The words on the tombstone had been inscribed with, "The grave of Bai Yunhai." Seeing the simple and crude tombstone of Bai Yunhai, Bai Yuntian's eyes couldn't help but begin to flow with tears once more. Slowly kneeling down by the grave, she gingerly touched the dusty tombstone as if it was the face of her sister and not cold hard stone. Chapter 576, Carrying the coffin into the city. Bai Yuntian knelt down by Bai Yunhai's grave and tenderly touched the ice-cold gravestone. Droplets of tears flowed from her eyes as she revealed a sorrowful expression. In her mind, she couldn't help but think back 20 years ago when she was with her younger sister Bai Yunhai. Every day with her had been a day of joy and happiness. They were practically inseparable. They would play with one another, eat with one another, and never were they ever apart. Sister Yunhai, everything was your sister's fault. I was unable to do anything. If I had known that you had escaped as well, I would never have allowed you to fall to such a state. Sister Yunhai, you suffered plenty those years. Even in your death your grave is a simple one. Blame your older sister for being inconsiderable. Bai Yuntian wailed in grief. Mother, your daughter will soon take revenge for you. Your daughter will personally kill the beast that claimed your life. Please, mother, rest in peace. Bai Lian knelt beside the grave and wailed alongside Bai Yuntian. Seeing the pained look on their faces, Jian Chen felt a wave of grief in him well up from where he stood to the side, but he did not speak. Right by his side, Ming Dong, Yu Yu, and Tai Ta were all flabbergasted by the strange sight in front of them. Not a single one of them knew what was happening, nor did they understand the sudden relationship between Bai Lian's mother and Bai Yuntian. Unable to hold her silence after a short while, Yu Yu finally whispered to Jian Chen, what is going on here? How did this situation happen? Sighing, Jian Chen explained, Yun Lian's mother and my mother were sisters. She no longer goes by the name Yun Lian. Now she goes by Bai Lian. By rights, she is my cousin. Ming Dong and Yu Yu's mouth dropped wide open at this piece of information from the shock they received. What? The young daughter of the Yun family is your younger cousin? Yu Yu exclaimed in shock. That's utterly unbelievable. Ming Dong cried out as well before looking back to Bai Lian who was crying by the grave. He never imagined that the golden daughter that had barged into their room 2 days ago would actually be Jian Chen's cousin. Jian Chen watched his mother cry in grief for a small moment longer before finally walking up to console her. "Mother, please don't feel sad. The dead cannot come back to life, and Auntie Yunhai passed away years ago." Wiping her tears away, Bai Yuntian gave a small sob. "Sister Yunhai, you must have felt alone resting in this place by yourself for so many years. Worry not, my sister. Now that I have finally found you, there is no way I won't bring you back to Changyang Manor. I will be with you daily. You won't be lonely anymore." Moving to the back of the gravestone, Bai Yuntian gently hugged the stone, and let her tears drop onto the tough earth below. After years and years of weathering the wind, rain, and harsh sunlight, the soil had grown dry and rigid. After several attempts to dig out the soil with her tender fingers, Bai Yuntian's fingers had chafed up and started to bleed. However, she did not seem to notice nor care. The pain that she felt in her fingers was incomparable to the pain she felt in her heart, so with all of her energy, she dug at the gravestone. With thoughts of bringing the grave of her sister away from here. Such a sight hurt Jian Chen tremendously. Hurriedly grabbing hold of his mother's arm, he pleaded with her, "Mother, don't be like this, stop. Let your son do this, please rest for now." Bai Yuntian shook her head, "No. I must save my sister myself. I will take my sister Yunhai back to Changyang Manor with my own 2 hands." Digging with all her might, her previously jade-like fingers were covered with both dirt and blood. The ground had become stained with her blood. "Mother, please let your son help you." If he could not stop her, then Jian Chen would have to follow his mother's plan and take part himself. Moving to dig out the grave half as tall as he was, Jian Chen tried his best to alleviate his mother's pains as much as possible. Bai Lian quickly joined the 2 of them next to the grave. Together, the 3 dug at the grave with only their hands. "Mother, your daughter has done you wrong by letting you rest alone in this desolate wasteland for so many years. Mom, you'll have a new home and family soon. Your daughter will follow you there. You won't be alone anymore. Allow me to help you, Auntie." Yu was moved by such a display. Holding back her tears, she knelt in front of the grave and began to use her tender, white hands to dig at the dirt. Ming Dong displayed a complicated look on his face as he watched. Without a word, he followed Yu's example to kneel by the grave, and used his own fingers to dig into the dirt to excavate the tomb underneath. In the end, even Tai Ta joined their attempt. Under the orderly movements of everyone, the grave was quickly excavated. Just 2 meters beneath the earth was a single dark coffin. "Mother!" Seeing this coffin, Bai Lian's sorrows and pains exploded all at once in the form of a single pain-filled howl. If not for Jian Chen stopping her, she would have most likely jumped down to hold the coffin. Jian Chen's heart was full of sorrow at the sight of this muddy coffin. Letting out a mental sigh to himself, he slowly levitated the coffin out of the ground by using the energy of the world. He carefully set it down on the open ground. Nearing the coffin, Bai Yuntian's bloody hands gently wiped off the dirt on the coffin as if she was carefully polishing a priceless jewel. "Sister Yunhai, 20 years have passed by so fast. Do you still recognize me?" "It's me, your older sister Yuntian." Bai Yuntian muttered. "Yunhai, come home with your sister. I'll be by your side daily. You won't be lonely anymore, okay?" Bai Lian half collapsed onto the coffin with tears flowing from her eyes in an endless stream. So heavy were her tears that her eyes had already grown red from crying too much. "Mother, Bai Lian, we should hurry the coffin back to the city. After spending so many years buried in this wasteland, I am sure Auntie is fed up with this place." Jian Chen consoled them. This time, there was no opposition from Bai Yuntian and Bai Lian. They both agreed with Jian Chen's suggestion. Under Jian Chen's actions, he carried the coffin and left the area. Holding the coffin, Jian Chen re-entered Fengyang City under the eyes of countless of bystanders. They stared at him in complete flummox at this queer sight. Do you think that guy has an illness or something? Look at all that dirt, I bet he just dug it from the ground. Is he planning on entering the city with that? Doesn't he know that it's forbidden to do that? He doesn't know the rules at all, I bet. Let's watch and see if the guards stop him. Countless of soldiers and mercenaries pointed and jeered in Jian Chen's direction as they ridiculed him. With the coffin on his shoulder, Jian Chen quickly strode forward to enter the city. One of the soldiers immediately came up to stop Jian Chen. Seeing that Jian Chen was carrying a coffin, the soldier took him to be a vagabond that couldn't possibly have any money, and decided that there would be no need to be civil with him. With a high and mighty voice, he said, "Stop right there. Our Fengyang city has disallowed any coffin from entering the city. If you wish to enter the city, get lost." Before he could even finish speaking, Jian Chen had already let out a loud command before kicking the soldier square in the chest to send the soldier flying. "There's a troublemaker. Arrest him." As if a nest of a hornet had been poked, a multitude of soldiers came flying out with their weapons raised. On top of the city walls, several soldiers had prepared their crossbows to fire at Jian Chen. Jian Chen's mood had been soured by today's events, and with the annoying buzz of the soldiers, he felt his killing intent rise. With so many soldiers charging at him, Jian Chen's eyes let out an icy glare before his killing intent billowed out from his body, dropping the surrounding temperature down several degrees. Anyone close to him immediately felt as if they had been plunged into icy cold water, stopping them dead in their tracks. On the city walls, the captain of the city guards muttered to himself, "Dearie me. With the heads of the three major clans dead, our Fengyang city has lost a terrible amount of military might. Our city lord is the only Earth Saint Master left as a result from those obscenely strong youngsters back at the auction house. In age, they are younger than me, but in power, they are incomparably stronger than me. One of them is even a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master, they will become a Heaven Saint Master any day now. How inconceivable. How very inconceivable. I wonder which family they belong to." The commander's eyes reflected an envious look. At the same time, the killing intent coming from Jian Chen had immediately shaken the commander from his thoughts. Sensing the tremendous amount of killing intent, the commander turned pale with fright. Bolting up from his chair, he cried out, "What killing intent? Where is that coming from?" Before he had even finished his sentence, the commander was already running out from the building he was in. When the commander saw the soldiers surrounding Jian Chen down below, his eyes immediately dilated and his face drained of any remaining color. In a frantic hurry, he cried out, "Stay your hand. Every soldier, stand down at once." As he cried out, the commander thought back to the sight he had witnessed back at the Heavenly Phoenix auction house. It had been deeply ingrained in his mind that this new group of people were not people they could offend at any costs. Chapter 577, An Impressive Burial. 1. There had been no need for the commander to command them to stop, for the soldiers around Jian Chen were already at a complete stop. With terrified eyes, they observed the murderous aura radiating from Jian Chen in fear. Thoroughly intimidated by Jian Chen, not a single soldier dared to act as aggressive as before. The commander feared that the soldiers had angered Jian Chen and that he would slaughter them all in anger, so the commander didn't delay for even a moment. He leaped off the wall to run to Jian Chen. When he saw the dark and foreboding expression on Jian Chen's face, the commander's face grew nervous and his body started to shake. This youngster in front of him was the very person that feared not even the Harido clan. A power like that was far beyond what Fengyang City could even think of annoying. "My lord, please quell your anger. This was a mistake born from my careless discipline. Your humble servant will properly penalize these bastards who have done you wrong. This one hopes that you will turn the other cheek and forego what has happened just now and let bygones be bygones." The commander hurriedly asked Jian Chen for forgiveness with an enchanting smile and a respectful salute. He was afraid that this small offense would cause another calamity to befall Fengyang City. The commander carefully observed Jian Chen's face before he hurriedly turned around to look at the soldiers around them. He would definitely not be as respectful to these soldiers as he was to Jian Chen. His face darkened as he let a voice filled with a superior boom from his mouth, "You sightless bastards! How dare you act so rudely against the Lord here? Are you tired of living? Who was the idiot to stand up against this Lord here? Stand front and center to beg for forgiveness at once." There was a slight shuffle of hesitation within the soldiers before finally a pale-faced soldier came stumbling out from behind the group. There was a clear footprint on his chest, marking him as the soldier Jian Chen had first kicked. Striding over to the soldier, he slammed his foot into the butt of the soldier and began to scold him, "Hurry up and beg forgiveness from the Lord." The commander had kicked him so hard that the soldier fell flat onto the ground next to Jian Chen's feet. There was no anger in the soldier's face at all, only complete and utter fear. He was fully aware of the fact that he had angered the worst person possible. "My lord, this lowly soldier has done wrong. This lowly soldier with no eyes has erred and wasted the precious time of my lord. My lord, please be generous and spare the life of your subordinate." The soldier lamented pitifully right in front of Jian Chen. Right now in the man's mind, his regret had been so huge that his intestines had gone green. With a heavy and dark expression, Jian Chen's eyes frostily glared at the soldier in front of him. The series of events that had happened today had already caused his heart to feel down, causing his temperament to be crabbier. When the soldier had stopped him from carrying the coffin of his Aunt Yunhai into the city, Jian Chen had truly been ready to kill. If not for the timely apology from the commander, there would have most likely been a bloodbath in front of the city gates. By this time, Yu had moved to Jian Chen's side and held his left arm. "Jian Chen, let it go. There's no need to waste time on such small matters." As a result of Yu Yu's words, the murderous aura around Jian Chen's body slowly ebbed away. Still staring icily at the soldier kneeling in front of him, he yelled, "Scram!" Seeing that the situation had stabilized, the commander was able to let out the long breath of air he was holding mentally. Grabbing the clothes of the soldier and tossing him to the side, he cried out in anger, "Hurry up and move out of the way. Don't block the Lord's path." A smile then greeted his face as he spoke to Jian Chen with a cordial tone, "My lord, if you would, please enter the city. This one won't hold up any more of your precious time. Please, have a nice trip." Despite Fengyang City decreeing that carrying unlucky items such as coffins were forbidden, Jian Chen's entrance brokered no attempt from the commander to stop him. On the contrary, the commander had welcomed him in with the utmost respect as if he was afraid of offending him. Without another word, Jian Chen heaved the coffin with Bai Yunhai into the city. With a heavy expression behind him, Bai Yuntian, Yu Yu, Ming Dong, Tai Ta, and Bai Lian followed. After they entered the city, the area near the city gates finally resumed its normal schedule. There had been plenty of people who had stopped as a result of the exchange, but not a single one of them spoke after the series of events that had transpired. Everyone could only stare at the retreating figures of Jian Chen and his group in silent awe. In the eyes of the merchants and mercenaries, the city guards were not to be trifled with. Although these soldiers weren't stronger than the mercenaries, they were still representing the Blue Wind Kingdom's government as a military. In the case that there was conflict, the entire Blue Wind Kingdom would post a warrant or bounty for the one responsible if one did not have the proper backing. The people who first saw the youngster carry the coffin toward the gates witnessed the youth kicking and injuring one of the guards, and also watched the very same youth be bowed down to and waited on like a dog by the commander of the city guards for forgiveness. Everyone could only try to guess what powerful status the youth held for the commander to fear him so much. With the still dirty coffin held high on his shoulders, Jian Chen strode down the streets of the city, causing everyone to glance over at him. Whomever Jian Chen had passed, they would stop and turn to look at him with a bizarre expression. Entering the city with a coffin in hand was an extremely rare sight to be seen in Fengyang City. Unlucky items like coffins were forbidden within the city. They could only be left outside. However, plenty of them recognized Jian Chen as the one responsible for killing 5 Earth Saint Masters at the Heavenly Phoenix auction house several days ago. It was with great fright that the look in their eyes turned fearful. Soon enough, Jian Chen had brought the coffin back to the inn. Upon entering the inn, he had frightened one of the waiters, who wailed straight away, "Customer, how could you bring a coffin into this establishment? Our city has forbidden the possession of one, please put it away, or you'll scare away the other customers." The innkeeper came rushing out when he heard the commotion. When he saw the coffin, he said with an embarrassed expression, "Dear customer, if you could please find somewhere else to put the coffin. We cannot have such an item in our inn, otherwise, how will our other customers dare rest here?" Striding forward, Ming Dong placed several purple coins into the innkeeper's palm, "Then we'll rent out the entire inn. If they're willing to stay here, then let them. If they don't, then they can get lost. Spare the words and get out of our way." The stack of purple coins that Ming Dong gave the innkeeper was more than enough to pay for the expenses of the inn for several months. Seeing such a tremendous sum placed into his hand, the innkeeper's previously anxious eyebrows loosened and rose up in delight. Hurriedly putting away the coins, he replied, "Yes, well spoken. A coffin is only but a small matter, nothing worth worrying about at all. Dear guests, if you would please, come in." When Jian Chen and the others disappeared up the stairwell, the innkeeper clasped the purple coins with both hands in utmost delight. How generous those lords are! These purple coins are far more than enough for this inn to operate for months. A windfall this was definitely a profit for us. Some of the mercenaries who had been eating off by the side chose that time to speak up. "Innkeeper, the word fear doesn't exist in your dictionary, does it? Do you even know who those people who gave you money are?" "Of course I know. They have to be the young lords of some well-off family. Where else would they have so much money?" The innkeeper laughed in response. "Here, let me tell you. Those youngsters were the ones that killed the Earth Saint Masters of the 3 clans to this city. Even the 2 Earth Saint Masters from the Harito clan were killed off by them," the mercenary explained. Straight away, the innkeeper's face had drained of its color. "What? They're the ones that killed the 3 heads?" The same mercenary nodded in confirmation. "Correct. The youth that gave you that stack of coins was an Earth Saint Master who is only a step away from becoming a Heaven Saint Master." The shopkeeper's knees buckled from the realization. Falling to the floor in apparent weakness, he muttered despondently, "Dear heavens, I took their money and even had the gall to tell them to put their items elsewhere. I must be tired of living." Jian Chen and the others only stayed in that inn for another day before a whole platoon of soldiers and their Class 4 magical beast mounts came riding into Fengyang City. There were a total of 50 of them, and they all wore black armor. When the city soldiers saw the Class 4 magical beasts, they didn't dare stop them. Without even questioning them, the city soldiers opened up the gates to let them into the city. The group of 50 stampeded through the streets of Fengyang City before finally coming to a stop right outside the inn. Dismounting, they all strode into the inn and headed straight to Jian Chen's room. "We pay our respects to the Imperial Protector." The soldiers bent down in salute as they greeted Jian Chen. Jian Chen's eyes swept over the black-armored soldiers and then to the one leading the troop, "Qin Wujian, you arrived quickly, I see. If it is the command of the honored Imperial Protector, then your servant would not dare hesitate to command my soldiers here at once." The armored man replied. He was one of the commanders from the Qinhuang Kingdom, Qin Wujian. "Prepare a carriage and make the arrangements to transfer my auntie's coffin back to the Jessen Kingdom," Jian Chen instructed. In order to bring Bai Yunhai's coffin back to the Jessen Kingdom, Jian Chen had decided to use a carriage to transport her back. It would serve as a way to honor Bai Yunhai, and it would be the proper way to transport her back home. A matter like this shouldn't be haphazardly arranged, so Jian Chen thought of the best way to resolve the matter. Chapter 578, An Impressive Burial, 2. It did not take too long for a grand carriage to come to a stop right in front of the inn. One could tell that this carriage was brand new just by looking at it. It was particularly pretty and had plenty of flowers on it, like it was a carriage decorated for a festival. Jian Chen could be seen carrying the coffin of Bai Yunhai out of the inn before he carefully placed it into the carriage. The carriage had previously been rented with a single Class 1 magical beast, but the beast had quickly been replaced with 9 Class 4 magical beasts. That had been a major change for the inhabitants of Fengyang City at the very least. They had never heard of anyone using a Class 4 magical beast as a mount before. After everything was finished, the group wasted no more time staying within the city. They slowly urged the carriage out from the city. Many of them chose to walk, but at least 50 of the Eastern Deity Sword soldiers remained seated on top of their Class 4 magical beast mounts. Like loyal guards, they protected the carriage from both sides as it traveled down the roads, amid the people who talked about them. Such a gathering was unprecedented within Fengyang City. Even the merchants and mercenaries that had been to plenty of cities felt stunned. Quickly moving out of the way when the carriage drew near, they all clearly saw the Class 4 magical beasts. The people that owned them were definitely not people they could afford to mess with. The carriage and the men guarding it left Fengyang City in a hurry, and now with a complete troop formation ready to pull the carriage, they traveled even faster. In a decent amount of time, the carriage arrived back within Jessen Kingdom. Jian Chen had not forgotten about the head of the Yun family. He had a squadron of soldiers look after him from behind the carriage. This short journey had taken roughly 7 days before they arrived back at Lore City within the Jessen Kingdom. These 7 days had not been much to Jian Chen, Ming Dong, or the other soldiers, but for Bai Lian and Bai Yuntian, who were not used to traveling long distances, their faces had grown sagged and weary halfway through the journey. Even after returning home, Bai Yuntian disregarded her weary body and sought out the assistant housekeeper of the Changyang clan to arrange Bai Yunhai's funeral. When he had heard the news, the assistant housekeeper looked hesitant. "Fourth lady, having a funeral for an outsider shortly after our Changyang clan was refurbished would be a little inappropriate. The elders of the clan will most likely not agree to such a thing." Bai Yuntian's face grew dark as she said, "What outsider? This is my sister." "Assistant housekeeper Su, you will make the arrangements at once." The man found himself stuck between a rock and a hard place. The Changyang clan was not some sort of two-bit clan. They were a clan of nobles within the Jessen Kingdom. Having a funeral for an outsider was something the assistant housekeeper found inappropriate. "Did you hear what my mother said? What is so inappropriate about burying my auntie here? Hurry up and make the preparations." Jian Chen suddenly came toward them, giving the man a sharp glare. After being hit by the angry eyes of Jian Chen, the assistant housekeeper began to tremble. Yes. 1,000 pardons, fourth master. This servant will make the preparations right away." When Jian Chen had spoke up, the man didn't dare to speak back to him. Jian Chen held the highest position within the Changyang clan, and the man was more than aware of it. The honor and glory that the Changyang clan had obtained was solely due to Jian Chen's contributions. When Jian Chen spoke, not a single person, not even the elders of the clan, would dare speak a word that would conflict with his own. Under the management of the assistant housekeeper, the imperial guards and servants of the clan immediately moved into action to prepare for a funeral and the necessary arrangements. In the end, it had been Chang Wuji himself that came forward to give advice to the others. Under the combined efforts of hundreds, it had taken half a day before everything was complete. Bai Yunhai's coffin had fresh flowers arranged all around it. Bai Yuntian had hung a scroll with her sister's likeness on it from the memories of years ago. From the image, Bai Yunhai looked to be a very regal person, and one could see the very close similarities between she and Bai Yuntian because of the vividness of the image. The only defect in the image was on the face of Bai Yunhai. There was a rather malicious scar. After everything was done, a ceremonious burial project began. The rest of Lore City found the burial ceremony rather strange and confusing since it was arranged during a prosperous time for the Changyang clan. At the same time, it caused a ripple of gossip to resonate across Lore City. In a flash, the head of the other 3 major clans of Lore City came to visit and inquire what in the world had happened. At the same time, several of the smaller factions came by as well to express their sympathies. They also hoped that they could join the funeral themselves and earn them some small favors from the clan. After the second day of the funeral, the king of the Jessan kingdom came to Lore City along with his commander, Bai Dao, and roughly 500 soldiers. Even the headmaster of Kargath Academy, Kafir, had been informed and flew from his academy to visit. With the peculiar status of the Changyang clan, the entire future of the Jessan kingdom was now relying upon the clan. Now that a funeral had suddenly popped up in the clan, the entire city had been startled and wondered just which important person had left the world. For that reason, the major powers of the kingdom came rushing on over. When they all realized that it was Bai Yuntian's long-separated sister, they all let out a secret sigh of relief. Bai Dao on the other hand still felt rather depressed. News of the funeral quickly made its way around the area, and soon, the many factions of the Jessan kingdom were made aware of the happenings within the Changyang clan. This had prompted plenty of important figures to come flying to Lore City to express their sympathies. Even the 2 grand elders of the Huayun sect came by in person. One reason they came was to express their condolences, the other reason was to give their apologies for what had transpired between them and Jian Chen all those years ago. They even brought along a hefty sum to help their apology. In short, the funeral of Bai Yunhai was very important. Not only did the major factions of the Jessan kingdom come to visit, the king himself came to pay his respects. The funeral continued for 7 whole days before wrapping up. This time, Bai Yunhai's grave was no longer in a desolate place like before. Instead it was in the courtyard where Bai Yuntian lived within the compound. A jewel made specifically for the purpose of feng shui had been affixed to Bai Yunhai's grave, and had made the grave into a very grandiose one. With the funeral ending, every visiting party slowly went back home. Only Bai Dao was left remaining within the household. Like a statue, he remained upright in front of Bai Yunhai's grave for 3 days without moving, but his face revealed pain. Bai Dao and Bai Yuntian were both siblings under the same parents, meaning that the parents of Bai Yunhai were also the very same parents of Bai Dao. Not only did they have the cleanest blood ties, he and Bai Yunhai had also been very close playmates since they were young. Sister Yunhai, I never thought that you survived that day as well, and in a neighboring city as well. Why did I not hear about you sooner? If I had known, I would have gathered the 3 of us together to live. But, now we are separated once more by the borders of yin and yang. Bai Dao's eyes stared sorrowfully at the grave as he whispered to it. Bai Yuntian pulled Bai Lian's arm to him, brother, this the daughter that Sister Yunhai left behind. Her name is Bai Lian. Bai Lian, this is your uncle. Looking to the armor-wearing Bai Dao, Bai Lian let out a filial-sounding phrase, uncle. Bai Dao's eyes finally tore themselves from the grave to look to the 18-year-old Bai Lian with complicated emotions. After a moment of silence, he finally said, although my younger sister Bai Yunhai has left us, she left behind a child for us. Bai Lian. You needn't worry. Your uncle will protect you from now on. For the first time in forever, Bai Lian felt that she finally had a warm family that cared and loved her. A family that could protect her. A family that was completely different than the Yun family. Tears began to fall from her eyes because of her new family. Bai Dao looked back to the grave of Yunhai once more. Where is the murderer of Yunhai? He has been locked within the tinder house. We don't wish for him to die so easily, so we left him there for the time being. Jian Chen responded. Bai Lian had already given the captive the antidote to the poison he had been administered, so he was in no danger of dying from it just yet. Jian Chen hesitated when he saw Bai Dao swiftly turn to walk to the tinder house. Uncle, don't let him die so easily. I know. Bai Dao didn't even bother to turn around to respond. He quickly walked out of Jian Chen's sight. Not long after his disappearance, a miserable wail could be heard coming from within the Changyang clan. It was such a pain-filled wail that everyone that heard it could tell that that person was being tortured. In the blink of an eye, half a month passed, and the funeral that had been held within the Changyang clan finally died down and was soon forgotten by everyone. Even Bai Lian and Bai Yuntian found the pain in their hearts slowly dull, but despite that, a smile could hardly be seen on their faces. Bai Dao stayed within Changyang Manor for another half-month during this time. The hatred he felt for the one that killed Bai Yunhai had been etched within his bones, and every day he would use the cruelest methods he knew in order to treat the head of the Yun family to a hell of pain. After exhausting all the methods he knew on the man's body, Bai Dao had then given the man an excruciatingly slow death. Once dead, he threw out the man's body into the plains for the wild animals to eat. What the man had suffered while alive and dead could be described to be the worst experience to feel on the continent. After the death of the head of the Yun family, the vendetta for Bai Yunhai had finally reached an end. Bai Dao didn't stay much longer after that and had left for the imperial palace the day after. After Bai Dao left, Jian Chen and the others gathered together along with his parents and the others from the clan. They were preparing to leave the compound to continue to develop the flame mercenaries. "Cousin, please let me go with you." Suddenly, Bai Lian asked to join Jian Chen with an earnest look on her face. Chapter 579, Carnage Mercenaries puzzled, Jian Chen looked to Bai Lian, the road I walk is very terrifying and fraught with dangerous and gruesome deaths. A young woman like you shouldn't involve yourself with such a lifestyle. After these few days, Jian Chen had slowly warmed up to her and had even started to consider her a sister. "Liener, the continent is very dangerous with very few safe sanctuaries. You shouldn't travel outside. Stay here in Changyang Manor, no one will mistreat you here," Bai Yuntian explained. Bai Lian shook her head as she pleaded, "Auntie, I don't wish to stay here forever. I was unable to venture out by myself in the past. I wish to experience what the continent is like for myself. Cousin, please take me along with you." Jian Chen hesitated for a moment before finally agreeing to her request. "Fine then. If you want to come with us, then you can. Seeing how dangerous the continent is would be a boon for you in any case. Since you haven't materialized your saint weapon, I could also give you some cultivation advice to help accelerate your growth." Hearing Jian Chen speak, Bai Yuntian knew that she couldn't hold back her niece anymore. With a warning to Jian Chen, she said, "Xianger, you must protect your cousin well. She is still weak. Do not let anything happen to her at all costs. Mother, please rest assured. I will definitely protect Bai Lian," Jian Chen pledged. Now that he had gained a cousin, Jian Chen felt like he was finally an older brother. At the same time, he felt as if another weight had been placed onto his shoulders now that he had to protect his younger cousin as well. Jian Chen and Bai Lian bid farewell to the entire clan before leaving together. They were headed back to the Blue Wind Kingdom. 2 days later, Jian Chen and the others entered the borders of the Blue Wind Kingdom. Then with another half-day of travel, they entered the first-class city that was known as the Cloud Capital. If Jian Chen and the others were to ride their Class 3 magical beasts into a city like Wake City, it would have caused quite a stir. However, the sight of such mounts were common within the Cloud Capital. Compared to a second-class city, a first-class city was far more prosperous. There were plenty of people riding on Class 3 magical beasts in the first-class city, Cloud Capital. There had even been a single Class 4 magical beast on the streets. Plenty of mercenaries crowded the streets, and the majority of them were Saint Masters or Great Saint Masters at the very least. Compared to Fengyang City, this city was completely different. Jian Chen's group found a nearby inn to rest for the night before Ming Dong and Dugu Feng scouted the city for information. Tai Ta went with the two to walk around the city in hopes that he could learn a few things about the rules of society and how to survive. After the three of them left, only Jian Chen, Yu Yu, and Bai Lian were left within the inn. At this moment, the three of them were seated in the higher levels of the inn, and were slowly eating the local delicacies. While sampling the delicious food, they listened to the bored chatter of the other mercenaries in hopes that they could glean some information from their gossip. Jian Chen heard nothing of interest even after listening to them for a long time. These mercenaries talked about nothing other than what happened during their daily lives and would sometimes talk about how many magical beasts and monster cores they had gained that day. One of the mercenaries had even begun to drone about some of the prostitutes on the level above them. Ming Dong and the other two had made a quick retreat after learning all that they could. Taking a seat at the table, Ming Dong whispered to Jian Chen, "Brother, I've researched all that I could, but the power structure in this city is far more complicated than the clear one in Fengyang City." Ming Dong paused for a moment before taking a sip of wine from his cup. After finishing off the cup, he continued to say, "On the upside, there are 6 major powers to the Cloud Capital, 4 clans and 2 sections. These 6 powers appear to be the strongest that the Cloud Capital has to offer. Each one of these associations is very close and interconnected with the others. After several hundred years of development, I think that they're on the verge of becoming a single huge family with bloodlines connected to and from each power. Aside from those 6 powers, there's a few other clans and mercenary groups that aren't too low in power compared to them. Each one has an Earth Saint Master as their leader, but their names aren't as influential as the 6 leading powers. From what I can tell, there are several clans that have multiple Earth Saint Masters. Aside from the clans, which mercenary groups are strong in this city?" Jian Chen asked. "There's a total of 4 that I found. There's the Bloodthorn Mercenaries, the Bloodrose Mercenaries, the Feral Mercenaries, and the Carnage Mercenaries. Now, the relationship between the Bloodthorn Mercenaries and the Bloodrose Mercenaries is very interesting. I've heard that the captain of the Bloodrose Mercenaries is very beautiful but feisty. The captain of the Bloodthorn Mercenaries deeply loves her and has sought her attention for many years. They aren't a couple yet, but it is rather complicated between them, I heard. Whatever the details are, I don't know, but I do know that the 2 of them could be considered a single faction. The Feral Mercenaries shouldn't be belittled either. They are the most well-known mercenary group in the Cloud Capital, and their captain is the sworn brother of the ruler of the city. Every single faction within Cloud Capital has to give that group some face. As for the Carnage Mercenaries, they aren't a stable power within the city. Rather, they were once free roamers that eventually settled in the Cloud Capital 5 years ago and never left. Still, they are quite strong, but their numbers are lacking with roughly 300 people. Each one of them are elite warriors, and I heard that their weakest member is a Saint Master in strength. 50 of them are great Saint Masters at the very least, and I heard that the captain and his 2 vice-captains are Earth Saint Masters, making them the sole power within the city to have 3 Earth Saint Masters. Combined with the Bloodrose and the Bloodthorn Mercenaries, the Carnage Mercenaries make even the Lord of the city fearful. But the Carnage Mercenaries are still relatively low profile within the city. It took plenty of time and energy for the 3 of us to make the inquiries, but we managed to find out that there has been very little movement from them in their 5 years of residency here. Every single member seems to hide away in their compound without ever coming out. With no way of income and no other property, it is a very mysterious situation. Carnage Mercenaries. Jian Chen muttered with a pensive look on his face. When Ming Dong had mentioned their name, Jian Chen had found that mercenary group to be strange as well. "Cousin, the Carnage Mercenaries have to be hiding something if they never come out from their spot. Could they all be cultivating? Or perhaps they have some sort of enemy and are afraid of being discovered?" Bai Lian guessed with glimmering eyes. She looked to the handsome face of Jian Chen with eyes of worship. Thinking for a moment, Jian Chen replied, "It's hard to say. Ming Dong, where are the Carnage Mercenaries?" "They're not too far away from here. Just head 10 kilometers that way and you'll arrive at a large courtyard. All 300 of the mercenaries live there." Ming Dong replied. Jian Chen closed his eyes and began to spread his presence in the direction Ming Dong had said. In a flash, he located the courtyard where the Carnage Mercenaries were located with absolute clarity. Bai Lian had guessed correctly. All 300 of the mercenaries were hidden away within the building cultivating. Each one of them held a Class 3 or Class 4 monster core, meaning that they were all exceptionally wealthy while several others were stationed around the courtyard as sentries. In the middle of the courtyard, 3 Earth Saint Masters were trying their best to cultivate as well. Reopening his eyes, Jian Chen muttered, "The Carnage mercenaries have much more to them as we inferred. If they were just a simple power, then the Carnage mercenaries wouldn't have been known as the strongest group in the city." "Jian Chen, do you think we should subjugate them first?" Ming Dong asked. "The Carnage mercenaries are still quite mysterious. I think we should first investigate their background to see if they have any support behind them, and if they do, we should see how large it is," Du Feng proposed. Ming Dong's eyebrows narrowed together. The Carnage mercenaries remain far too low profile. Although they've been here for 5 years, the amount of information on them is ridiculously small. I had to expend an absurd amount of time and energy to find what I did. That's not even probing about their background. I think that only the major powers of the Cloud Capital know about them, but I don't know much about those powers. If we want to learn more, it won't be easy." "Fine then, that's enough discussion. The Carnage mercenaries are extremely strange. Nothing more needs to be said about that. We should pay them a visit and see if there's a chance we learn anything about them." Jian Chen spoke. After that, the group left the inn. They rode away on their Class 3 magical beasts, headed toward the courtyards where the Carnage mercenaries stayed. Chapter 580, Subjugation, 1. Following a brief moment of time later, Jian Chen and his entourage arrived at the courtyards where the Carnage mercenaries were located. The building the Carnage mercenaries lived in wasn't very small, but there had been no attempt made to clean the building at all. The simple doors were closed shut and had a layer of dust to them. At a glance, anyone would know that the area had not been swept in a very long time. Several footsteps could be seen right in front of the gates as well. Jian Chen surveyed the courtyards for a while before chuckling. "I don't know if the Carnage mercenaries are too lazy to clean or if they're lazy in general, but the fact that their doorfront is so dirty is quite unique. The Carnage mercenaries are far more secretive than we thought. If they were like the other powers in this city, then they would have kept their doorfront far cleaner than this." Ming Dong replied in amazement. "Why don't we go in and take a look?" Jian Chen suggested. One by one, they filed into the courtyards with their magical beast mounts while Du Feng swiftly strode forward to knock on the heavy gates. Not long after, the gates began to open slowly to reveal a 40-year-old male. The man was bald, but his eyes were piercingly sharp and there was a very malevolent scar on his face that added to his intimidation factor. Suspicious, the man's eyes glanced over the young women in front of the gates before speaking with an impassive voice. "Who are you?" "We are members of the Flame Mercenaries here today to pay a visit." Jian Chen responded with a smile. He cupped his hands with practiced ease. "The Flame Mercenaries?" The man muttered under his breath as his eyebrows furrowed together. This was a foreign name to him, and there was no faction called the Flame Mercenaries from what he knew about the Cloud Capital. The man studied Jian Chen and the others a second time before his face darkened. "It is a rather inconvenient time for our Carnage mercenaries to be receiving any guests, so if you could please return home." As he spoke, the man's head started to retreat back behind the door while he was closing it. Even as he tried to do so, he found that the door would not budge. Du Feng's hand was stopping the door from moving even the slightest inch, preventing the bald man from closing the door. A sharp glare made its way into the bald man's eyes as he saw this. "Sire, what is the meaning of this?" he questioned with a heavy expression. Smiling, Jian Chen replied, "Is this how the Carnage mercenaries treat visitors when they come to visit?" Walking straight in, he opened the next set of doors and headed into the inner courtyards. Startled, the man moved to stop Jian Chen from heading further in. He also said, "Sire, this is the territory of the Carnage mercenaries. If you continue to act in such an impetuous manner, then do not blame me for my rudeness. His warning was clear and loud enough for the other sentries in the area to hear. At least 20 men came running in from every direction, gathering in the courtyards. Each one of them had a penetrating glare that honed in on Jian Chen and the others with murderous intent that was filled with hostility. Seeing the malicious expressions on everyone's faces, Ming Dong and Du Gufeng revealed looks of disdain. The captain of our flame mercenaries personally came here to visit your carnage mercenaries. That much in itself is already a great honor. Yet, not only do you not reciprocate that kindness, you also turn us away at your door. Is that how your carnage mercenaries treat guests? Hurry up and call your captain at once. Ming Dong sneered. The power of an Earth Saint Master came exploding forth from his body all at once. It filled the entire courtyard with a dominating presence and caused each of the carnage mercenaries to take a step back in shock. Straight away, even more of the mercenaries came running out from within the courtyards. Ha ha ha, if there are guests, then our carnage mercenaries will definitely welcome them with open arms. Please forgive my subordinates for not understanding that. I hope that you will forgive me for my negligence as well and that you won't take this slight too seriously. Suddenly, a clear and crisp laughter could be heard coming from in front of them as 3 men with luxurious-looking robes came striding into the open area. The one who had spoken was the one in the middle. This man was about 40 years in age and was rather handsome in looks. He had all 5 features still on his pale face, and his sharp eyebrows did nothing to hide the twinkling light in his eyes. His smile was filled with warmth and friendliness that left a favorable impression of him. On his left was yet another middle-aged man that did not vary too much in age from him. This man wore an expensive white robe that was rather regal. A seemingly feral presence could be barely detected radiating from his body. A feeling like this gave off the feeling of a wolf hidden under a sheep's skin. Something about him was off. On his right was an elderly man approaching his 70s. His face was covered with wrinkles and half of his white hair was already gone so that very little remained on his rather ruined head. A sight like that made him look like he would keel over at any moment and die. Despite his looks, the elder's eyes flashed brightly with spirit and with unbelievable depth. It was almost as if a fog of smoke covered his eyes since one would not be able to see what he was thinking. Captain! Captain! We pay our respects to Captain and the Vice-Captains. Straight away, the 20 or so carnage mercenaries began to salute the 3 men with eyes that reflected their worship. Stopping in front of Jian Chen, the middle-aged man's eyes landed on both Du Gufeng and Ming Dong. They were both standing right behind Jian Chen. Finally, his eyes moved to Jian Chen before he smiled and cupped his hands together. This one is the captain of the carnage mercenaries, Zhang Tian. These 2 men next to me are my vice-captains, Shan Xiong and Mu Qi. Jian Chen's eyes studied the 3 while simultaneously cupping his hands in return. This one is called Jian Chen, captain of the flame mercenaries. This person here is Ming Dong, the vice-captain, and this is Du Gufeng, an elder of my flame mercenaries. When Zhang Tian heard Ming Dong's name, his mind found it rather familiar as if he had heard it before. However, he paid it no mind since he had to greet the guests. Thus, he put the thought away for the time being. Putting up an amiable smile, he began to escort the group in. Please come in. We can talk inside. Jian Chen and the others were escorted by Zhang Tian into the inner halls, which were simple in decoration and did not at all resemble the halls of a place of a strong faction. After a small discussion between Jian Chen and Zhang Tian, the 2 quickly got to the crux of the problem. Sire Zhang Tian, I can see that you and your mercenaries are all gathered inside and spend every day cultivating with monster cores without ever going out. I can only assume that some family is behind yours, is that right? Jian Chen didn't hesitate to speak his thoughts at all. Hearing Jian Chen's statement, Zhang Tian had not been startled at all. It had been 5 years since he and his mercenaries had settled in this city, so what he and his mercenaries were doing in this building was already known as a public secret. Brother Jian Chen, you are surely joking. My Carnage Mercenaries is only a small-time group that relies only on me. What other family is there to support us? Despite this, Zhang Tian displayed a small look of pain and what seemed to be misery. Jian Chen had not expected to see such an expression on Zhang Tian's face, but he immediately guessed that it was more likely than not that the Carnage Mercenaries had no one but themselves to rely upon. With that thinking, Jian Chen immediately felt some happiness. Sire Zhang Tian, this one didn't come here for no reason. This time, I have a matter of business that I wish to discuss with you. Zhang Tian's face immediately grew solemn as he stared back at Jian Chen with bright eyes to await the new few words from him. Sire Zhang Tian, you are more than aware of the rules of the Tian Yuan continent. The strong feed off the weak, and only the strong are worthy of earning even more power. But gaining power isn't as easy as it sounds, it is a very long road with plenty of obstacles. Lose your footing even once and you might not ever recover. So I came today this time to see if you would like to join our flame mercenaries. With our powers combined, we will definitely increase the strength of our group. Would Sire Zhang Tian agree to such an endeavor? Hearing this, Zhang Tian and the others could only stare in abject shock at Jian Chen. Not a single one of them thought that Jian Chen would come visit them with this goal in mind. The three of them quickly regained their wits. Zhang Tian and the elder Mu Qi were both very calm on the surface, but Shan Xiong was not as well-tempered as they were. A look of fury overcame his face as he glared at Jian Chen with all the anger he could muster. So you wish for our Carnage Mercenaries to submit to your Flame Mercenaries? Ha, how audacious of you! How could you find it in you to even say such words? Shan Xiong furiously roared. Chapter 581, Subjugation, 2, Jian Chen smiled and cut in onto Shan Xiong before he could speak any longer. I believe the three of you know that to become a major power on the Tian Yuan continent requires both power and a strong patron. Your Carnage Mercenaries are indeed strong enough in the Cloud Capital to call yourselves a hegemon, but you are struggling to maintain that position. There are plenty of families or sects that are comparable to yours in this city, and the 6 families here are most especially strong in comparison. Even if they're divided into 6 powers, they may as well hold hands as a symbol of how close they are. Should the time come for them to stand together against a common enemy, there won't be a single faction within the city strong enough to fight them. Zhang Tian and Shan Xiong had said nothing at Jian Chen's words and had a pensive look on their faces. Even Shan Xiong had found reason in Jian Chen's words and grew somewhat subdued, but he still found it hard to suppress the anger on his face. Brother Jian Chen, I will have to admit that there is logic in what you say. Our Carnage Mercenaries may seem glorious to the city as one of the major powers here, but in our minds, we can only fear the 6 clans. Truly, no one would be able to go against their combined might if they joined together. However, there are more to this city than the 6 clans, there are plenty of other considerable forces. If the 6 clans do indeed ally themselves against us, then not a single one of those factions will sit idly and await death to come for them, they too, will unite the others to fight. Zhang Tian spoke calmly with an equally calm face. It was as if Jian Chen's suggestion for the Carnage Mercenaries to submit to Jian Chen had not bothered him. With his keen eyes and sharp mind, Zhang Tian had already figured that Jian Chen was not some ordinary person. Although he couldn't estimate his strength, he was able to see Ming Dong and Du Gufeng's strength as Earth Saint Masters very clearly due to the aura that was radiating off their bodies. The fact that these 2 Earth Saint Masters were subordinates to Jian Chen and sat behind him without a word had only added to Jian Chen's status, and so Zhang Tian found it prudent to treat him carefully. Sire Zhang Tian, there is logic to your words as well. Yet, that would only help maintain the Carnage Mercenaries' status within the Cloud Capital. Do you and your Carnage Mercenaries plan to stay within this piddling city forever? Do you not yearn to expand into the outer world? Jian Chen smiled. Ha, kid, your ambitions are grand, I give you that. Who hasn't wished to expand their might into the world? However, a feat like that is easier said than done. Without a tremendous amount of power, survival by itself will be hard. Do you think your flame mercenaries has that ability? Shan Xiong sneered. Confidently, Jian Chen nodded his head. Correct, our flame mercenaries does have that ability. You braggart. Shan Xiong rebuked with a taunting expression. Zhan Tian's heart had skipped a beat. Observing Jian Chen thoughtfully for a moment, he finally said, "This world is a world where power is equal to respect. A veritable showcase of the strong and where the weak are food for the strong. That is a rule that is ingrained deep within my body." His voice left off after that sentence so that he could stare down Jian Chen with a serious expression. "Brother Jian Chen, having my carnage mercenaries enter your flame mercenaries is not an easy task. Would it be possible for you to tell me what power your flame mercenaries has, or what patron it is that supports you? Or at the very least, a direction you wish to expand in the future?" A victorious smile appeared on Jian Chen's face at those words. He knew that Zhan Tian was more or less won over. All he needed was proof of power, and the carnage mercenaries would swear their allegiances. A development like this had let Jian Chen's worries decrease by one. A nervous expression appeared on Shan Xiong's face as he realized Zhan Tian's intentions. "Captain." But then Zhan Tian put a stop to Shan Xiong's next words. "Shan Xiong, there's no need to talk, I alone will make this decision." Biting his lips in unease, Shan Xiong finally pursed his lips together and sat there without a word. "Sire Zhan Tian, the scale of our flame mercenaries will not be in the scope of your carnage mercenaries in numbers, I fear. We have no strong power supporting us, as my flame mercenaries rely only on each other. But with time, the flame mercenaries will become the strongest in the Blue Wind Kingdom, and even the strongest power in this part of the continent." Jian Chen spoke. Furrowing his eyebrows, Zhan Tian questioned, "In the surrounding kingdoms to this area, it is perhaps the Changyang clan in the Jessan kingdom that could claim the right to being the strongest around. There are none that would dare provoke them. But brother Jian Chen, do you mean to tell me that your flame mercenaries can overcome the Changyang clan? Let us forego that topic for now and focus on the Blue Wind Kingdom. As of right now, there are still several Heaven Saint Masters that sit on top of the kingdom. Does your flame mercenaries have the power to deal with them? I don't believe that the Heaven Saint Masters of this kingdom will allow you to expand your influence by the sidelines." Jian Chen gave a smile of contempt. "Worry not. If the strongest of the Blue Wind Kingdom really does try to trouble my flame mercenaries, then even if they send the Heaven Saint Masters, my flame mercenaries will see that none of them will return alive. The Changyang clan in the Jessan Kingdom is something you will never need to worry about, for it is an impossibility for a conflict to ever arise between them and I." A flash of light appeared on Zhan Tian's eyes. "Did you originate from the Jessan Kingdom? Or is there some sort of connection between you and the Changyang clan?" At those words, Zhan Tian suddenly realized something and swung his head to look at the silent Ming Dong to the side with shock. "Ming Dong? Is that your name? Are you the very same Ming Dong from the Jessan Kingdom that used a heaven-tier battle skill to wound a Heaven Saint Master?" A toothy smile appeared on Ming Dong's face as he responded, "Correct, that person is me. I didn't imagine that even Captain Zhan Tian would know of my little name. It is a humbling experience." Zhan Tian, Mu Qi, and Shan Xiong had sucked in a deep breath when they heard Ming Dong confirm his identity. Giving each other a thunderstruck look, they turned back to Ming Dong with a whole new opinion of him. They all knew that this youth right in front of them wasn't even 30 years old, but he was already a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master. Becoming a Heaven Saint Master was merely just another step away, and this Ming Dong was also in possession of a Heaven-tier battle skill, an item that any person would salivate at the mouth for. Furthermore, he had used this battle skill at one of the strongholds of the Jessan Kingdom to heavily injure a Heaven Saint Master. If not for his compatriot, then the Heaven Saint Master would have been known as the very first one to die at the hands of an Earth Saint Master. "I had no idea that you would be the very same Ming Dong that injured a Heaven Saint Master. How blind I was, truly. And Captain Jian Chen, that isn't your true name either, I would imagine." If these old eyes of mine can guess correctly, then Captain Jian Chen, you are the imperial protector of the Jessen Kingdom and the fourth master of the Changyang clan, Changyang Xiangtian. This time, the speaker had been Mu Qi, who stared at Jian Chen with shock. Jian Chen had not denied it and smiled in return. You are an elder of tremendous intellect. I can only admire your keen eyes on being able to see me through. Smiling, Mu Qi spoke. What person doesn't know about the fourth master of the Changyang clan, and the power he wields? Rumors of how the Ming Dong that injured a Heaven Saint master being close friends with the fourth master is already widespread even here. It is also known that Ming Dong frequents the Changyang manor. Then Ming Dong suddenly joined the Flame Mercenaries and is willing to take a spot as a vice-captain rather than the captain spot. The captain is similarly a youth in his 20s, similar to the fourth master. With these few details, it is simple to conclude the identity of this captain. If I couldn't do something like this, then I would be a very ignorant man. With a bright smile, Jian Chen spoke. Then, would you be willing to join my Flame Mercenaries? The three men gave another look at one another with hesitation before Zhang Tian finally spoke. Fourth master, please allow this one to impose a question. Speak it then. Jian Chen replied. If I may, when the fourth master established the Flame Mercenaries, who is it that we swear fealty to? The fourth master, or the Changyang clan? Zhang Tian asked seriously. The Flame Mercenaries isn't as complicated as you think it is. It is completely managed by me, with there being no connection between the Changyang clan and the Flame Mercenaries. You can take the Flame Mercenaries to be a completely independent faction without any allegiances. Zhang Tian hesitated once more as he spoke. Fourth master, my Carnage Mercenaries would be willing to join with your Flame Mercenaries as part of a whole, but you must guarantee that my Carnage Mercenaries will be managed by me. I can agree to that. The Carnage Mercenaries will remain under you three as you see fit. I won't interfere with any of your internal affairs, but I hope that you will make sure to act in the best interest of the entire Flame Mercenaries and listen when I call upon you. Jian Chen didn't hesitate to agree to Zhang Tian's request. Then that's fine. If that's all, then my Carnage Mercenaries will join with your Flame Mercenaries. I trust that this will be the most sensible choice for us to make. Zhang Tian laughed carefreely. Although he knew that he would be swearing fealty to the Flame Mercenaries, he didn't seem to mind it all too much. Jian Chen had felt rather happy at this rather easy process of subjugation of the Flame Mercenaries as well. Worry not, in a short amount of time, the Flame Mercenaries will shake the entire continent with its name. After the major discussions had finally reached an end, Jian Chen did not stay much longer within the courtyards. After agreeing to meet tomorrow morning at the inn to discuss some more, Jian Chen and the others left the Carnage Mercenaries. When Jian Chen and them left, Shan Xiong spoke to Zhang Tian with an unwilling expression. Captain, are we really going to submit to the Carnage Mercenaries so easily? Letting out a sigh, Mu Qi responded with dim eyes. Shan Xiong, forget your past status for now. At the current moment, joining the Flame Mercenaries gives us not only a chance, but a chance to return. Mu Qi is correct. Shan Xiong, you must look at the long-term benefits. Joining the Flame Mercenaries is an opportunity that rarely comes by. It is by no means a demeaning trait to our statuses. Despite the Flame Mercenaries not being too large, as long as Changyang Xiangtian is there, then it will definitely become a major power within the area. Zhang Tian spoke. Changyang Xiangtian was able to become a Heaven Saint Masters in his 20s. That alone speaks wonders of his perverse talent at cultivation. I am fully convinced that Changyang Xiangtian will ascend into the higher realms any given day now, and with such a person leading the Flame Mercenaries, it would be impossible for the mercenaries to not flourish. This'll make our own development that much easier. It isn't easy to become a Heaven Saint Master after all. Chapter 582, A Surge in Power. With the subjugation of the Carnage Mercenaries going exceedingly well, Jian Chen and the group had been very happy on their path back home. On the second morning, the three leaders of the Carnage mercenaries met up with Jian Chen at the inn they were staying as they had agreed upon the day before. And so they begun to discuss once more about business. The next step in my plans is the Bloodthorn mercenaries, the Bloodrose mercenaries, and the Feral mercenaries. They are the groups I wish to bring into our folds, and since you three have stayed within the Cloud Capital for so long, you must know plenty about them. Would you please tell us what would be prudent to know as we plan? Jian Chen asked Zhang Tian and the other two. Mu Qi had been the first to speak from the three. The Feral mercenaries have an extremely close bond with the Lord of the Cloud Capital. If you wish to force them into submission, it would require a tremendous amount of power. The Bloodrose and the Bloodthorn mercenaries on the other hand is much more simpler. From my perspective, you should have those two submit first. I agree. Subjugating the Bloodrose and Bloodthorn mercenaries will be a far easier task than the Feral mercenaries. Since the captain of the Bloodthorn mercenaries is infatuated with the captain of the Bloodrose mercenaries, we should first target the Bloodrose mercenaries. As long as we get them to submit, then the Bloodthorn mercenaries will follow shortly afterwards. Zhang Tian agreed. Jian Chen nodded his head after listening to their reasoning. If it is as you say, then we should first subjugate the Bloodrose mercenaries. Why don't you three follow me over there? The three of us have quite the friendship with their captain, Jasmine. It'd be an easier task if we advise her. Zhang Tian spoke. After the discussion was over, Jian Chen and the others left the inn and rode on their mounts towards where the Bloodrose mercenaries were. It was about 30 or so kilometers between the Bloodrose mercenaries and where Jian Chen had started off from. With the abundant amount of people crowding the streets, Jian Chen's group had to cross through on their mounts at a slow and careful pace. By the time they arrived, a decent amount of time had already passed. Like the Carnage mercenaries, the Bloodrose mercenaries lived within a giant courtyard. But the similarities had ended there. The courtyards of the Bloodrose mercenaries had been spotless without any dust to be seen. 2 sentries could even be seen standing by the gates. Because the 3 leaders of the Carnage mercenaries were seen with Jian Chen, the sentries by the gate had not dared to stop them. Immediately letting out a courteous salute to the group, the guards lead them into the courtyards while sending someone ahead to notify the captain. And so Jian Chen and his group were seated by the inner halls while they waited for the captain of the Bloodrose mercenaries to arrive. They hadn't had to wait for too long before a heroic-looking woman came walking out from within the building. Ha! Zhang Tian, Mu Qi, Shan Xiong, what winds brought you here to my humble abode today? For you 3 to come to my Bloodrose mercenaries, my home has been blessed by your presence. Looking up towards the source of the voice, Jian Chen saw a woman around the age of 30 or so come walking in. She was beautiful in appearance and quite graceful in her movements. This woman wore a dark green skirt with an equally dark green blouse. Tying up her hair behind her head was a single bow tie that added to her allure. Ha, Captain Jasmine, your words are far too serious to be wasted on the likes of us. It has been 2 years since we last met, but since then, you have grown far more beautiful. Zhang Tian laughed as he bowed with cupped hands towards her. Smiling in return, Jasmine's eyes swiveled to look at Jian Chen and the people behind him. Might I inquire who you might be? Jian Chen cupped his hands in salute and smiled. This one is Jian Chen, captain of the Flame Mercenaries. Flame Mercenaries? Jasmine spoke with a soft voice. Brother Jian Chen, you are not a native to the Cloud Capital, I take it. Correct. I am not from the Cloud Capital. Jian Chen admitted before continuing onwards. Captain Jasmine, I am here today in hopes that a proposal can be made between your mercenary group and mine. Taking a seat at the table with the others, Jasmine stretched her arms lazily. Then don't stop your speech midway through and say it. Still smiling, Jian Chen spoke. Then allow me to be frank. Captain Jasmine, I hope that your Bloodrose mercenaries will join into my Flame Mercenaries. Jasmine had flown straight to her feet as soon as Jian Chen's words registered in her mind. In an instant, her calm eyes had gained a fearsome glint to them as she stared Jian Chen down. What did you say? Jasmine enunciated each word slowly and icily like the expression on her face. This one hopes that Captain Jasmine will bring your Bloodrose mercenaries into my Flame mercenaries as a division of it. Jian Chen repeated once more for her to hear. The iciness in Jasmine's eyes kicked up a notch as she glared at Jian Chen. Seeing that it did not seem like he was joking, she shook her head with a cold smile. Little brother, you shouldn't joke around with such a joke like that. Jian Chen laughed in response, but I am not joking. The Carnage mercenaries have already joined up with my Flame mercenaries. If Captain Jasmine is not convinced, then please ask Zhang Tian, Mu Qi, or Shan Xiong. Startled by that response, Jasmine's eyes flew over to Zhang Tian and the other two who had only gave her a nod in confirmation. Jasmine had been alarmed to an even greater detail by this confirmation. The Carnage mercenaries were amongst the strongest within the Cloud Capital and had 3 Earth Saint Masters in their ranks. But now they suddenly joined with an unheard of mercenary group that had been simply unbelievable. Impossible. Zhang Tian, Mu Qi, Shan Xiong, has your Carnage mercenaries truly joined with the Flame mercenaries? Jasmine cried out involuntarily. Correct. Our Carnage mercenaries have joined with the Flame mercenaries. It is without a doubt the truth. It is our belief that should we join with the Flame mercenaries, we will establish ourselves within the Tian Yuan continent. No longer will we be sequestered to this small city and forced to hide like a turtle in its shell. Zhang Tian spoke calmly. Are the Flame mercenaries that strong? Jasmine asked again as she looked back to Jian Chen with confusion and disbelief. Captain Jasmine, may I ask what the highest level battle skill is within your possession? Jian Chen asked. Although she was suspicious of why Jian Chen had asked such a question, she decided to answer honestly. 2 advanced human tier battle skills. Captain Jasmine, allow me to tell you a benefit to joining my Flame mercenaries. For every person that joins my Flame mercenaries, then they will be given a primary Earth tier battle skill to learn free of charge as long as they are an Earth Saint Master. Jian Chen smiled. Jasmine's eyes had immediately lit up at the sound of that. An Earth tier battle skill was very sparse within the Blue Wind Kingdom. At the current moment, only the experts that reigned at the top had an Earth tier battle skill. She had not been the only one to be surprised. Zhang Tian and the other two suddenly felt their heart rates skyrocket upwards and their breathing had started to come in shorter bursts. But it had been the next sentence of Jian Chen that caused the greatest amount of shock. In the future, should your group contribute greatly to the Flame mercenaries with the utmost devotion, then I will impart an advanced Earth tier battle skill or perhaps even a Heaven tier battle skill. Jian Chen spoke. What? A Heaven tier battle skill? You have one of those. Jasmine had completely lost her composure at that as she cried out in shock. Both of her red phoenix eyes had grown wide with disbelief. Correct. I am in possession of not just one Heaven tier battle skill, but multiple of them. So, how about it, Captain Jasmine? Will you consider joining my Flame mercenaries? In the case that you do with the utmost loyalty and a great enough contribution, then I will be more than happy to aware you with a Heaven tier battle skill. This is something that people can only yearn for in their dreams. Jian Chen smiled. In this moment, he only wished to quickly expand his Flame mercenaries. For the sake of improving the backbone of the group, he couldn't afford to be stingy and would thus treat everyone equally. The enticement that Heaven tier battle skill would naturally be tremendous. Unless someone already had multiple Heaven tier battle skills, not a single person would be able to resist the allure and temptation it brought. This time, Jasmine had only taken a moment to think before agreeing to Jian Chen's request to join the Bloodrose mercenaries into the Flame mercenaries. After the subjugation of the Bloodrose mercenaries were done, Jian Chen, Zhang Tian, and Jasmine began to discuss the next course of action. It was only until late in the afternoon that they left the courtyards with Jasmine leaving with them. Traveling once more on the magical beast mounts through the streets, they had attracted a fair amount of attention now that the leaders of the Carnage mercenaries and the captain of the Bloodrose mercenaries were together, and with a group of youngsters no less. That much had been more than enough for the people to gossip and spread the news back to the insiders of the city. But Jian Chen and the others hadn't cared at all for this. Riding on their mounts, they finally arrived at the grounds of the Bloodthorn mercenaries after some time. The captain of the Bloodthorn mercenaries had been a very straightforward person named Hai with a true infatuation with the captain of the Bloodrose mercenaries. Despite her indifferent treatment of him, his love for her did not decrease at all. The very moment when he heard that the Bloodrose mercenaries had joined with the Flame mercenaries, he didn't hesitate to join the Bloodthorn mercenaries as well in hopes that his relationship with Jasmine could be furthered another step. In short, the subjugation of the Bloodthorn mercenaries had gone by swiftly and smoothly. Not even a cup of tea later, Jian Chen had already entered them into his group without even adding a beneficial reason to butter them up with. And now, Jian Chen had collected the Carnage mercenaries, the Bloodrose mercenaries, and the Bloodthorn mercenaries into a single entity under the Flame mercenaries. In 2 short days, the Flame mercenaries had skyrocketed in power, causing no small joy to Jian Chen. As the captain of the Flame mercenaries, this could only be described as a surge of power. However, there was no such thing as a wall that could prevent wind entirely. News of the merge between the 3 mercenary groups had made its way to the 6 clans and even the mansion of the city lord. Such a piece of information had caused all of them to grow nervous. The combined might of the 3 mercenary groups meant at least 5 Earth Saint Masters joined together. For the 6 clans in comparison, that was a formidable power that even they found difficulty in matching. It had been the 6 clans that had been the most nervous of them all in the city. A meeting had instantly been called for with the head of each of the 6 clans to discuss what to do next. Chapter 583, The Movement of 6 Major Clans within a secret room located at a secret location. The leaders of the 6 clans of the Cloud Capital were gathered around a table with serious faces. I believe everyone is now aware that the Bloodthorn mercenaries, the Bloodsting mercenaries, and the Carnage mercenaries have all joined together to form a single mercenary group. This to us is undoubtedly an unfavorable situation. An elder spoke. That is correct. With the 3 mercenary groups joining together, they now have at least 5 Earth Saint Masters. A force like that is comparable to the unison of our 6 clans almost. In my perspective, we must take action now or else we will not like the horrendous aftermath that will come next. A white-robed man in his middling ages spoke seriously. Taking the first course of action is indeed the right choice. But we first must find out the exact reason for why this impromptu coalition has happened. For what reason have they renamed themselves to the Flame mercenaries? From what my informants tell me, the captains of the Carnage mercenaries and the Bloodthorn mercenaries were walking behind a youngster. Perhaps it was because of that youth they were subjugated? An elder spoke. Then it would appear that this youth is not your average youth. However, no matter what status he holds, we must ensure that he doesn't expand his power any more into this city. In 2 short days, this youth was able to combine 3 large mercenary groups together. That alone is proof enough that his ambitions are beyond what they should be. 3 groups won't be enough to satisfy him, I bet. If we allow him to gather even more strength in this city, then his next targets will be us soon enough. I can agree with that sentiment. If we continue to sit around like this, then we will ultimately be digging our own graves. When the moment comes for the Flame mercenaries to overcome us in power, then the next sacrifice to be annexed will be us. We must take action now without any time to spare. And so the 6 men descended into a fierce discussion. The rate of growth that the Flame mercenaries gained was more than enough to cause them all to feel restless. An elder with white hair suddenly gave a light cough. Gentlemen, this old man has thought of a way to stop the Flame mercenaries from growing any stronger. If the Flame mercenaries wishes to annex all of the stronger factions in the Cloud Capital, then why can't we do the same? This way, our 6 clans can unite to form a single alliance and have any and all factions that wish to preserve their status and name to join with us for the time being. In the case that the other side begins their encroachment, then we will have enough men to start a counter-defense. Yes, I agree. This is a very good way to deal with the growth of the flame mercenaries. With their current strength, it will mean an unbelievable amount of damages on our part if we try to act against them now. But if we unite everyone, then we'll have enough people no matter how much the flame mercenaries try to expand. And at the same time, we'll have more than enough manpower to eliminate the flame mercenaries while minimizing our own damages. Yes, that seems like the best course of action. However, I don't believe the flame mercenaries will for sure try to fight against the entire cloud capital. Still, that does not mean we should not try to prevent his growth. Otherwise, it will be hard to do so in the future. For now, we should wait and see what they do next. In the case he does try something, we will have to be ready to stop him. Then we shall implement this course of action straight away. Time cannot be wasted, let us all return home to make the proper preparations. A short amount of time later, the 6 clans had all a plan to counteract against the flame mercenaries. The growth of the flame mercenaries had been far too fast for their liking if they had been able to subjugate 3 different mercenary groups in 2 short days. It was a fearful thing for the 6 clans. None of them wanted to be annexed by any single power, so they had been more than willing to suppress the flame mercenaries at a moment's notice. The response from the 6 clans had been very fast. As soon as their discussion were over, each one of the clans had immediately got into contact with every single faction they knew. Since these factions were also aware of the situation with the flame mercenaries, not a single one of them had hesitated to join with the 6 clans to form an alliance. With even more people added into the group, the alliance had quickly expanded. As of that current moment, there were at least 10 Earth Saint Masters in the alliance along with the ones from the 6 clans. News of the 6 clans joining together to form an alliance had made its way to Jian Chen's ears as well, but he had not been concerned in the slightest. In his eyes, it was a futile attempt that served absolutely no use. On the second day, Jian Chen had gathered the captain of the Bloodrose mercenaries, Jasmine, the captain of the Bloodthorn mercenaries, Ha and I, and the captain of the Carnage mercenaries, Zhang Tian, and his 2 vice-captains together with Jian Chen standing in front of them. By his side was a worn-out manual. Pushing the manual towards them, Jian Chen spoke, "Now that you've joined the flame mercenaries, I will fulfill my end of the bargain. In front of me are 5 primary Earth tier battle skills. Choose whichever one fits you most. In the future when someone from your group becomes an Earth Saint Master, then let them learn from this manual. In the future, if your contributions are good enough while also maintaining a loyal attitude to the flame mercenaries, then I will impart a heaven tier battle skill to you. Thank you, Captain." Seeing the manuals on the table, each one of the captains had flames in their eyes as they gave their thanks before immediately choosing from one of the 5 battle skills. Out of the 5 of them, the captain of the Bloodthorn mercenaries had been the most excited. He had joined the flame mercenaries solely because of Jasmine, so he hadn't realized that joining the flame mercenaries would have such a great bonus like this. When Jian Chen had talked about the heaven tier battle skill, his own heart was nearly about to leap out from his chest. Jian Chen's actions there had been an undoubtedly good plan to entice the hearts of people. With an Earth tier battle skill, Jian Chen would cement the feelings of loyalty they had for the flame mercenaries while also eliminating any ill will they might have for joining. Seeing the excited expressions on everyone's faces, Jian Chen smiled in response. This was a satisfactory reaction that he expected to see. After a short while, he spoke, "Our flame mercenaries won't stay too long in the cloud capital. Perhaps in a few days, we'll leave this place, so prepare your groups to move out of the city. Captain, I have a question to ask. Does the flame mercenaries have a place to stay? Where might it be? It can't be possible to have this many people drifting this way and that." Ha and I asked. With a pensive expression, Jian Chen spoke, "As of right now, there is no determined spot. Right now, We are just expanding the power of the flame mercenaries. After we subjugate the rest of the cloud capital and then the rest of the blue wind kingdom, we'll expand outwards into the surrounding kingdoms. This time, both Ha-En-I and Jasmine were startled to hear Jian Chen's plan. Neither of the two had thought that he would be thinking on such a large scale. To annex the entire Blue Wind Kingdom of its mercenary groups and then the ones from the surrounding kingdoms was not what they expected to be his goal. That concludes our discussion for now. Our next step is for you 5 to subjugate the powers with the Earth Saint Masters in the name of our flame mercenaries. Jian Chen spoke. With Zhan Tian and the other 4, there was no need for Jian Chen to personally take part. Those 5 would be more than enough. With that order, the 5 of them walked away. After they left, Jian Chen took the tiger cub who was rolling around on the bed into his arms and began to stroke its furry head as he started to think about what the next plan would be. At the current moment, all Jian Chen wanted to do was to expand the powers of his flame mercenaries. For the sake of his promise with Kendall, Jian Chen would make the flame mercenaries the strongest mercenary group on the continent. This was to say that not only was this a promise, it was a goal that Jian Chen would fulfill. Aside from him, there were no other Heaven Saint Masters in the Flame Mercenaries. But that fact was not enough to make Jian Chen concerned. As the leader, he was more than aware that the Flame Mercenaries was in its initial stage something like a child still and filled with superficial power. Right now, it wasn't even on the same level of power as the Blue Wind Kingdom, but with time, power could accumulate it slowly. Jian Chen wouldn't be able to say that he would be able to trust these newcomers to the Flame Mercenaries on how loyal they were. It would be no exaggeration to say that aside from Doer and the others, Jian Chen trusted no one else, Zhan Tian and the others included. But trust wasn't something Jian Chen needed from them at this current moment. They were new blood to the mercenaries, and Jian Chen was convinced that the more the Flame Mercenaries grew, the more and more these people will begin to develop loyalty for them. Sooner or later, everyone will feel like the mercenary group was family. Kai Er and the others felt that way especially. 2 hours had passed before Jian Chen had realized he had been pondering to himself within his room. It was only when a knock on the door was heard that Jian Chen was snapped out from his thoughts. Looking to the door, Jian Chen spoke out, "Come in." The door opened, revealing Ming Dong and Du Gufeng standing shoulder to shoulder as they walked in. Ming Dong was wearing a black robe fitted slightly for battle while Du Gufeng wore his customary fire-like red robes. "Jian Chen. Zhan Tian and the others have come into trouble. When they went to subjugate a sect, they just happened to come into contact with the people from the 6 clans and hennied in the grounds of the sect. As of right now, they have no way out." Ming Dong spoke with a slightly unsightly look. Jian Chen's eyebrows furrowed together at this piece of news. With a slight mutter to himself, he spoke, "This was not within my expectations. I had thought that the 6 clans would be slower to respond. Jian Chen, if the 6 clans have mobilized themselves against us, then we may as well go all out to subjugate them all at once. There's no need to run here and there to pick them off one by one. But to do that, we'll need to have you meet them in person. I'd be enough to deal with most of them, but they too have people of my same level of strength, meaning if we were to fight, it would become a battle to the death rather than submission. And if there are any Heaven Saint Masters behind them, then they won't dare to fight back even so." Ming Dong continued to speak. Chapter 584, Fealty from the 6 Major Clans. 1. Thinking for a moment, Jian Chen spoke, "Very well. If the 6 clans have come to our doors to stop us, then we will get 2 birds with a single arrow and subjugate them all at once. Take me there, we'll head over now." And so after, Jian Chen called for Yu Yu and Tai Ta to accompany him out from the inn and onto their Class 3 magical beast mounts to ride away. At this moment within a large courtyard in the cloud capital, hundreds of men were gathered within the enclosure to surround a group of 50 so tightly that not even water could leak out. From within these 50 people, there were 5 different figures that were especially prominent in everyone's eyes. There were perhaps only a small handful of people that wouldn't know these five: Captain Ha and I of the Bloodthorn Mercenaries, Captain Jasmine of the Bloodrose Mercenaries, Captain Zhan Tian of the Carnage Mercenaries, and his two vice-captains Shan Xiong and Mu Qi. Jasmine and Ha and I were both staring heavily at the surrounding people. Their eyes had most especially been focused on the dozen people standing in front. The both of them had grim expressions as they registered just who these people were. Each one of them were all titular figures of the Cloud Capital and were experts of the Earth Saint Master realm. Each one of them had been Earth Saint Masters for far longer than Ha and I and Jasmine and could easily fight them 2-to-1 with an advantage. Zhan Tian, Mu Qi, and Shan Xiong were all relaxed despite the situation they were in. Each one of them were calm despite being surrounded, and instead of being concerned like Jasmine and Ha and I were, they had instead looked at the group with a cold sneer as if their enemies were beneath their notice. It had taken a long period of time before Zhan Tian took a powerful step forward. "Gentlemen, what is the meaning of this? Do you wish to start a war with the Flame Mercenaries?" "AI, Zhan Tian, Mu Qi, Shan Xiong, Jasmine, Ha and I, we may not be very close to one another, but we have talked with one another before. It was an unexpected piece of information to hear that your group of all people would throw away your good position of captains to become the lackeys of an unknown mercenary group like the Flame Mercenaries. How is that worth it?" An elder spoke with regret as if he felt that it was a complete shame that these five people would willingly work another. "Zhan Tian, Jasmine, Ha and I, you three should withdraw from the Flame Mercenaries. Think about the glory you had as captains. What need is there to be a lackey? This is a complete insult to your status." Another man spoke. "Yes, Zhan Tian. Your Carnage Mercenaries were amongst the strongest within the Cloud Capital. But now you've completely thrown away your entire group to the whims of another to use. Is that not an unworthy use of them?" There's still time to go back. With the combined power of the Cloud Capital, we'll definitely be able to drive out the evil. Practically every single person there were hoping that the 5 Earth Saint Masters would leave the Flame Mercenaries. Unless there was no other choice, not a single one of them wanted to engage in battle with the 5 of them. If one did happen, then there would undoubtedly be plenty of deaths, and those 5 Earth Saint Masters were definitely figures to be reckoned with. "That's enough, you should all stop talking." Mu Qi waved his hand in irritation. "We have joined with the Flame Mercenaries for glory. Don't even bother trying to use your cheap words to instigate us. It is futile. I, Ha and I, rejoice at the fact to join with the Flame Mercenaries. Trying to fan the flames of resentment is a waste of your energy and our time, so forget about it." The captain of the Bloodthorn Mercenaries spoke. After joining the Flame Mercenaries, he was finally able to obtain the Earth Tier battle skill that he had always dreamed of. Such a prize had excited him to no end and had caused him to feel extremely devoted to the Flame Mercenaries. Each one of the figures from the 6 clans grew dark in the face as they listened to Mu Qi and Ha and I. "It seems that the poison has already taken root within your body. There is no saving you now. Hee hee. I figured that us joining with the Flame Mercenaries would have nothing to do with you. To each their own, they say. So when did our actions have to be managed by you?" Zhan Tian laughed. Everyone could only stay in silence after hearing Zhan Tian's words. No longer even pretending to bother with the 6 heads, Zhan Tian turned to the elder by the side. "Lord Griff, if I may ask about your thoughts on our proposal. If you join our Flame Mercenaries, then the rewards you will receive will be far beyond what you could possibly gather within a single lifetime. It is a path that has no end in potential." Impudence. "Zhan Tian, Griff is already a part of our alliance, and yet you still dare try to pull him into your own. Do you even have eyes for our alliance?" Another elder spoke with a heavy expression. Zhan Tian was growing more and more out of control the more he represented the Flame Mercenaries, and now he was completely unafraid of them all. This result had made them all feel rather uneasy. There had to be something amiss here. I didn't think that this place would be so lively. Every single faction within the Cloud Capital is here, it seems. Suddenly, A loud but clear voice could be heard from the outside as several men and women suddenly came walking into view. They had an air of regalness to them that was unlike the ordinary air to most. Zhang Tian and the other four had lit up when they saw these figures. They could see that it was Jian Chen and the others. In an instant, everyone's eyes flew over to land onto Jian Chen's body with a look of extreme displeasure. "Who are you?" a middle-aged man barked at Jian Chen's group. "He is the captain of our flame mercenaries." Before Jian Chen had even said anything, Zhang Tian had introduced him first. He knew that Jian Chen was a heaven saint master with unlimited potential, so he would naturally want to curry favor with him. Everyone had looked flabbergasted at Jian Chen when they heard Zhang Tian's introduction. Shocked at the news, not a single one of them had thought that the one responsible for annexing 3 of the strongest mercenary groups in the Cloud Capital would be a youth that was barely in his 20s. And here I thought that the captain of the Flame Mercenaries would be some sort of strong burly man. Not once did I suspect that it would actually be a greenhorn brat. How ridiculous! A black-robed elder mocked. 3 of our Cloud Capital's strongest mercenary groups willingly kneeled down in front of a wet behind-the-ears brat like this? My, how shameful that is. Another thin-looking elder shook his head with a sigh. Jian Chen's eyes grew icy for a split moment before he barked out, "Ming Dong, Dugu Feng." Understanding what Jian Chen was asking them to do, Ming Dong and Dugu Feng immediately charged forward with their saint weapons out and ready to strike. Saint force billowed out from their weapons as it stabbed out at the two. The 2 elders that had spoken earlier were Earth Saint Masters as well, meaning that their reactions to Dugu Feng and Ming Dong had been swift. Straight away, they had taken out their saint weapons to block the strike. The sword in Dugu Feng's hand grew fiery as it approached his target, and with the sound of thunder striking metal, his sword clashed against the other with a large explosion. The elder he had clashed with had been forced back by the impact. "Third cycle Earth Saint Master." The man had cried out in shock. But then the next words that came out from Dugu Feng's mouth had shocked him even more. "Earth Tier Battle Skill Heaven Splitter Earthbreaker." A tremendous amount of fire billowed out from his giant sword as he lifted it upwards. With a mighty heave, Dugu Feng brought the sword down onto the elder to cleave him in 2. The elder had wanted to dodge when a fierce amount of pressure suddenly locked him into place. Feeling as if he had been bogged down by some sort of quagmire and had a 1,000-pound weight forced onto him, the elder had been rendered helpless to move. With no other choice, the elder could only make use of his human tier battle skill to try and defend himself against the earth tier battle skill. A human tier battle skill was like striking a stone with an egg when faced against an earth tier battle skill. As expected, the elder's body had been knocked flying away with blood coming out from his mouth after sustaining a tremendous amount of damage. At the same time, the thinner-looking elder had been grievously wounded by Ming Dong as well. Collapsing 20 meters away, he landed back down onto the ground with such force that a series of spiderweb-like cracks appeared all around him. The elder's face was white as if devoid of blood, and compared to the one that fought against Dugu Feng, this elder was far more injured. Ming Dong had not used any battle skill, but because of his strength as a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master, he was an extremely terrifying existence. A 2nd cycle Earth Saint Master like this elder would be easily defeated by him. Ming Dong and Dugu Feng's strength had completely startled the entire group, but they were not too afraid of the 2 just yet. There were over a dozen of them after all, and in numbers, they evidently had the advantage. With numbers, they could stifle even strength. But the use of an Earth Tier battle skill by Dugu Feng had been something everyone salivated over. Each one of them had thus looked to Dugu Feng with a look of avarice that wasn't hidden at all. "Impudence! How dare you strike at our allies? Everyone, forward!" Suddenly, another elder had let out a loud shout as he charged at Dugu Feng with his saint weapon and an impassioned look in his eyes. As soon as this elder spoke, the other remaining Earth Saint Masters had regained their wits and charged at Dugu Feng without fear of the consequences. Jian Chen looked at the group charge towards Dugu Feng with a cold sneer, How reckless. Jian Chen's hands clutched at the sky so as to gather the energy of the world. With a sudden push of his hands, Jian Chen let out a burst of explosive energy that howled mightily as if it was a dragon towards the group. Not a single one of the Earth Saint Masters that had charged at Dugu Feng had enough time to react before the tide of energy had slammed against them. Their robes had completely disintegrated into dust from where the energy had struck, while each one of them had been sent flying back. With blood coming out from their mouths, each person stumbled ruthlessly across the ground. It had only been a brief moment where not even enough time had transpired for a breath to even form. But in just that small prolapse of time, over 10 Earth Saint Masters had been injured so severely that they could only lay on the ground in pain. In front of a Heaven Saint Master, an Earth Saint Master was an extremely weak figure. There was not a chance for them to even be able to resist, and only Ming Dong was an exception. A middle-aged man with black armor had cried out with a quavering voice. This man had the head of one of the 6 clans. Still holding the white tiger cub in his hands next to his chest, Jian Chen stared down the heavily injured Earth Saint Masters with an icy glint in his eyes, but an expressionless look had been on his face as he spoke. Since you have all decided to form an alliance with one another against my flame mercenaries, I will not let you off lightly. Submit to me and prosper, or oppose me and perish. Make your decision. The dozen Earth Saint Masters had all looked unwell at his words, but not a single one of them dared to say anything in return. A Heaven Saint Master's strength was far too much to even fathom, and it was more than enough to force them all to remain quiet in fear. If a Heaven Saint Master wanted to kill them, then it would be as easily as killing an ant. Like how an ant wouldn't possibly have the strength to defend themselves against a human, these people wouldn't even have the strength to run away. With his speech, Jian Chen had managed to bring silence back down onto the courtyards. A moment later, an elderly man came walking forward before kneeling down in front of him and spoke out respectfully, "Oh, revered one, I am called Griff. My Griff clan would find it an honor to serve as your hands and feet and joined into your flame mercenaries." This elder was an Earth Saint Master himself and was also the master of the courtyard they were all standing in. Jian Chen smiled as he nodded his head, "Very well. My flame mercenaries won't treat anyone unfairly. To be able to serve your majesty would be a great honor for my Griff clan. What more could this one ask for?" Griff had spoken seriously. Joining the group a Heaven Saint Master was in was a dream come true for most. Not only would they earn a mountain as a support, they would earn a symbol of power. While this had meant that they would lose their status as a power holder, joining the flame mercenaries would still elevate their status by a tremendous amount. And so Jian Chen looked to the rest of the Earth Saint Masters. "Have you made your decision yet? I do not have all day to wait." Plenty of men had looked on in hesitance. Not all of them were like Griff and could throw away all that they built up for the sake of having a mountain as support. Many of them had spent far too much time and blood to have what they had today, and so they were unwilling to bow their heads towards him. Yu could more or less see what each one of them was thinking about when she saw their hesitation. "Be at ease, upon joining the flame mercenaries, we will not strip you of your authority. As long as you remain a part of our group, you will maintain the power you have now." She spoke. Everyone's eyes had lit up at the sound of that and looked to Jian Chen for confirmation. Smiling, Jian Chen replied, "Correct. Upon joining my flame mercenaries, I will not take away the authority you hold over your clans and sections. You may lead them as you would in the past, however, you will now place more emphasis on the benefit of the flame mercenaries. You will not do anything that will lead to the detriment of the flame mercenaries, or try to betray the flame mercenaries. If you do one of the such things, then I'm sure I won't need to explain the consequences for you to figure out." Jian Chen's eyes gained a heavy glint as he spoke the last line. "Very well then, my solar sect will join your flame mercenaries then. I hope that you will not eat your words and allow me to keep jurisdiction over my sect." An elder replied at last. "But of course. This is a guarantee I am willing to make. Jian Chen promised to help reassure everyone. Having Jian Chen's promise, the other leaders had no longer any more qualms. Even the head of the 6 clans had ultimately decided to join the Flame Mercenaries. With everyone now willing to join his Flame Mercenaries, Jian Chen had been satisfied. Now that he had these men and their factions in his group, the Flame Mercenaries had grown exponentially. Combined with Zhang Tian and the other 4, the mercenary group now had 20 or so Earth Saint Masters. And now, the Flame Mercenaries were a powerhouse to be reckoned with. Naturally, this was only in perspective to a small kingdom like the Blue Wind Kingdom. For the entire Tian Yuan continent, they were still nothing more but a small child. When you go back, you will throw out your old signboard and replace it with the banners of the Flame Mercenaries. Jian Chen had commanded. Yes. Each of the leaders had replied out at once. They were all smart people. Now that they were in the Flame Mercenaries, they knew where they stood. I will give you all some time to recover from your injuries. But make sure to take care of whatever needs to be done within your households, for as soon as you are all healed, we will be leaving the Cloud Capital. Jian Chen spoke. These words, however, had caused everyone to be startled. If we leave the Cloud Capital, then the power we've built up within this city will. One of the elders had been unwilling to leave behind the power base he had built up with his blood and sweat for so many years. A tiny amount of power like this is enough for you to be reluctant. How short-sighted you are. Follow our captain and he will guide you all to greatness. The power you all wield here in this tiny city pales in comparison to the future power our captain will bring us all. Zhang Tian had barked out. And so the doubt in everyone's heart gradually began to melt away. Now that Jian Chen had given them all their respective tasks, everyone had split ways to go off and do as they should. Not a single one of them had remained behind. Even Ming Dong, Zhang Tian, and the others had left as well. Chapter 586, Alarming the King. Forcing out a smile, Jian Chen spoke. Bai Lian, you are thinking a little too simplistically. I am nowhere as invincible as you think I am. In truth, there is a heavy weight on my shoulders. With blinking eyes, Bai Lian stared curiously at Jian Chen. Brother, just what weight is there on your shoulders? A sigh had escaped from Jian Chen's lips. He did not wish to discuss this problem and had thus decided to change the topic. Bai Lian, although your aptitude for cultivation is lackluster, there are plenty of heavenly resources that could change that. Wait until we come across one. I will buy one for you and see that you will find a renewed chance at cultivation. A heavenly resource that can do such a thing would have to be extremely ancient in age. Those are far and few on the continent, and each one of them worth a city's weight in gold almost. Only a very robust and flourishing kingdom would have these heavenly resources in stock. A kingdom like the Jesson or Blue Wind Kingdom would never have the chance for one. In other words, to come across one would be very rare. The usually very quiet Du Gufeng spoke. Wait until we have the chance to explore. I'll do my best to go and find if there are any heavenly resources that fit the description. Jian Chen laughed. As of right now, the amount of gold Jian Chen had could rival a kingdom. The loss of money for the sake of a heavenly resource would not bother him at all. And even Bai Lian had felt a mellow warmth in her heart and a smile on her face when she saw the care and concern Jian Chen had for her. With that said and done with, Jian Chen turned his attention to Tai Ta, who was currently seated on top of his magical beast mount in stone-cold silence. Having known Tai Ta's personality and what his expression meant, Jian Chen could tell that it would still take some time before Tai Ta would finally adjust to survival on the continent. Tai Ta, all that you've personally seen so far are just par for the course on the Tian Yuan continent. A continent where the strong eat the weak and where only the strong have the right to speak. To survive, you must be strong, and without power, there is no point in any discussion. Jian Chen spoke. A forlorn expression was on Tai Ta's face when he looked up to Jian Chen. Jian Chen, this world is far too cruel. I feel as if this is a land where bandits roam. That is an apt analogy. The world has always been like this. Without power, you will only be bullied by another. With power, everyone will fear you and would dare not anger you. What just happened in the courtyards of the Griff clan is only proof of that. Jian Chen laughed. Ha, big fellow, you're already such a big person with a mean-looking face yourself. But your heart is pure, what a twist. Ming Dong laughed. With some slight bitterness to her face, Yu responded to him, Jian Chen, your strength is far more than enough to step across the continent as you please. Just what weight is it on your shoulders that you cannot put down to enjoy life a little bit? AI. Jian Chen sighed. The weight on my shoulder is something I cannot put down. There are still matters that I must resolve. Just what sort of matters, will you tell us? Yu asked curiously. Jian Chen shook his head. It isn't that I don't wish to tell you, it's just that there is no benefit in you knowing the answer. Let us stop the chat for now and discuss what plans you might have for the Flame Mercenaries, shall we? And so the group began to discuss the matters of the Flame Mercenaries as they traveled on the road back to their inn. Although they had now monopolized every single powerful faction within the Cloud Capital, they were still staying within the inn from before. At the same time they had entered the inn, every single leader that had just joined the Flame Mercenaries had made it home as well. The very first thing they had done was to have someone tear down their signboards and replace it with the name of the Flame Mercenaries. Jian Chen's actions had flown at incredible speeds around the Cloud Capital. Soon enough, practically everyone had heard and learned about how the equilibrium of power had been completely and thoroughly shattered. In the past, there had been many factions vying against each other, but now, there was only a single faction left. In the 3 whole days that the Flame Mercenaries had been in the city, they had managed to overcome everyone's expectations, and so the entire city had been set abuzz with this as their topic of conversation. When the Lord of the Cloud Capital himself had heard what had transpired, his entire person went as stiff as a board. He simply couldn't believe what he had heard. The 10 or something factions that had once been separate were now united. With their powers united, they were now stronger than not only the city lord, but most of the factions in the Blue Wind Kingdom, a fact that was completely shocking to think about. A very serious problem had popped up in front of the lord now. His power as the lord of the city was practically for show now, and if the Flame Mercenaries were to try and do something in the city, there would be no way for him to do anything but to stand and watch by the sidelines. Just what sort of god is the captain of the Flame Mercenaries? If he is able to unite so many factions together under his banner, just what is he made of? The Lord had spoken with narrowed eyes. The robustness of the Flame Mercenaries had caused the man no small amount of discomfort. The Flame Mercenaries has already evolved to a point where even I cannot do a thing about them. All that's left for me to do is to report this to the king himself. Chapter 587, The Advent of a Powerful Enemy. Your Majesty, are you saying to get rid of this group? The elder inquired. A hum escaped from the king's mouth. I wouldn't say get rid of. The fact that another strong individual has appeared within the Blue Wind Kingdom is a boon to us as a whole. But I fear if he is an outsider and has come into our kingdom to expand his influence before taking those men and leaving the kingdom. Should that happen, the damages to our kingdom would be huge. We have only just finished a war with the Jessen kingdom, our weakened kingdom definitely cannot sustain another crippling. Then what does your majesty believe needs to be done? Master Ke Yun, I'll be troubling you this time. I hope that you will be able to investigate the Flame Mercenaries yourself and see what their goals are. If they wish to stay within the kingdom as they try to grow, then I will of course welcome them. But if they wish to steal away people or anything else that could affect our kingdom negatively, then we must strike them down at once without mercy. The king spoke. Understood, I know what needs to be done. The elder nodded before turning around to leave. One moment, Master Ke Yun. The king called out to the elder. Master Ke Yun, your king is worried that there will be a Heaven Saint Master within the mercenary group. So before you leave for the cloud capital, take some people with you. Thank you for your concern, Your Majesty. A brief smile and bow was given to the king before Ke Yun continued on his way out from the study with his head high. As soon as the king saw Ke Yun leave the room, a wave of concern washed over him. Why do I feel so much unease? Is it because of this flame mercenaries? Will it be this newly made mercenary group that will be a scourge onto my Blue Wind Kingdom? He had remained seated where he was with a grim expression. After the battle of the Jessen Kingdom, the kingdom has lost 4 of 8 Heaven Saint Masters, and even the remaining 4 are all heavily injured. I hope that this feeling of unease is just a feeling. Within the cloud capital, discussion had run rampant throughout the next 2 days. Whether it was the main streets, hidden alleyways, or the restaurants and inns, everyone could be heard talking about the flame mercenaries. The flame mercenaries had appeared in the cloud capital as if out of thin air. Then with unbelievable speed, they had combined the powers of the first-rate factions into an even bigger entity. News like this would definitely cause a major buzz within the city. Consequently, this had caused the second- and third-rate factions to feel slightly nervous. For the entire day, they had been extremely nervous to the point of having some clans electing to temporarily leaving the city and hide away until the crisis was gone. They were afraid that the hands of the flame mercenaries would stretch towards even them. Many if not all of the factions did not want to lose the power they had worked for to become a lackey for another. Of course, not every of these factions had been like that. Some of them had even took the initiative to look for the flame mercenaries in hopes of joining it. When the dozen major clans that had initially joined were given the command from Jian Chen, they began to accept all of the newcomers into the mercenary group without declining a single one. Right now, the flame mercenaries needed new blood to join the flame mercenaries. When it came to management, Jian Chen wasn't concerned. The dozen clans had enough power to lay down the law on their own and could easily manage their own mercenaries too. From the other side, the lord of the city had not been as happy to see more and more people join the flame mercenaries. The more people that joined, in fact, the more nervous he became. Nothing could be done on his part to ebb this chaotic maelstrom that was happening within his city aside from standing in silence on the sidelines and hope that someone from the kingdom would come in to interfere. It is fortunate that the feral mercenaries are all out on a mission, otherwise they might have been annexed into this mess too. The Lord muttered. In the blink of an eye, the maelstrom had only gotten bigger. For days had passed now, and the flame mercenaries had continued to swallow up even more factions into their folds. News of what had transpired in the city had even made its way across the entire Blue Wind Kingdom. No matter if it was a big or small city, each and every one of them had heard about it. Whether people believed it or not, the news that they received had sparked a paradigm shift in the Blue Wind Kingdom. The rise of a new powerful faction had come. A long ways away from the cloud capital was the first-class Tianlong city. Within the biggest mansion in the city stood a middle-aged man. Cloaked in white robes, this man stared out at the pond in front of him with both hands behind his back. This was the lord of Tianlong City. Almost absent-mindedly, the lord began to mutter to himself, "How unexpected. A truly unexpected event it is. The originally weak and piddling mercenary group back in Wake City has suddenly transformed to be strong enough to subjugate the entire cloud capital in several days. A change like that is utterly inconceivable." Inside another room in the same mansion sat Cat Ada and Katafii. Seated at a table, the two of them were discussing with one another over a bottle of wine. Having rained his cup, Cat Ada spoke to the other, "Katafii, you ought to know what happened back in the cloud capital too. Do you think that the flame mercenaries there are the very same ones from Wake City?" "I do." Katafii spoke. As the stoic one of the two, he cherished his words as if they were gold and did not dispense them easily. "How are you so sure?" Cat Ada pressed on. Jian Chen's strength is an unknown to us, but to have a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master at his beck and call? It is him. Katafii spoke. There had been suspicion and confusion to be in his mind, but his face betrayed none of those emotions. Draining the rest of his cup in one single gulp, Cat sighed. It really is hard to believe that Jian Chen has accomplished so much in just 2 years. 2 years ago he was said to have joined the gathering of the mercenaries. Did he receive some sort of boon while he was there? It's a tremendous pity that Mercenary City is nearly worlds apart from our kingdom. Only the most important news would make it way here. Jian Chen was at this moment sitting on top of his bed within the inn of the Cloud Capital. As he was trying to cultivate, Xiaobai continued to roll around on the covers of the bed for amusement. It had been fortunate that the cover was a very simple and inexpensive one, for it had already been torn to shreds by the claws of the tiger cub. Jian Chen had not left the inn for several days and spent his time cultivating in his room to wait for everyone else to fully recover and finish what was left before embarking on their trip out from the Cloud Capital. Captain of the Flame Mercenaries, make your way to see us at once. Suddenly, a voice like thunder had boomed through the skies. The speaker's voice had been so strong that it seemed to shake the world itself. The streets shook and the buildings quivered, even the clouds had been blown away to reveal the sun behind it. Everyone had heard the voice to what very well might belong to a god. For a moment, the entire Cloud Capital was quiet before suddenly erupting into a cacophony of sound. Everyone had turned their heads to the skies as if trying to find the origins of the voice. I see them, look. Over there. 2 men in the skies. Those are Heaven's Saint Masters. Suddenly, an excited middle-aged man pointed erratically at a point in the sky with a loud cry. The heads of everyone in the city turned to look where the man was pointed at, and indeed there were what appeared to be 2 tiny ant-like dots up in the sky. While small in figure, the might that exuded from them made them look more like gods descending upon the mortal world. Those are 2 Heaven's Saint Masters. They have to be here to fight the Flame Mercenaries. It's all over for them now. What a calamity for the Flame Mercenaries. With 2 Heaven Saint Masters here, they're ruined for sure. Everyone had been furiously discussing this topic with some hidden glee. But those who had joined the Flame Mercenaries already had gone pale in the face. The lord of the city came scrambling out from his mansion to stare out into the skies at the 2 Heaven Saint Masters. 2 Heaven Saint Masters? His Majesty has sent 2 over them over. Great! This is fantastic. The Flame Mercenaries are definitely ruined now. From every part of the Cloud Capital, several dozen factions that had aligned with the Flame Mercenaries came filing out. When they saw the 2 Heaven Saint Masters floating high in the sky, their faces had gone pale. Those who had been forced into joining had a happy look on their faces, but those who had willingly joined had felt a fearful look spread on their faces. A single Heaven Saint Master was already enough to worry them. But 2 Heaven Saint Masters was a tremendous amount of pressure on them. From within his own room, Jian Chen slowly opened his eyes to look up. At the same time, the doors to his room opened to reveal Ming Dong and the others. Jian Chen, 2 Heaven Saint Masters are here. How rambunctious they are to strut here and there on the skies. Do they think no one knows who they are? Ha, if they're willing to try it, I'll beat them black and blue until they run away. Ming Dong laughed. In his eyes, a Heaven Saint Master wasn't some sort of unreachable entity he could not chase up to. Captain of the Flame Mercenaries, come on out at once. Don't think that hiding away in the city like a tortoise will help you. This time, another voice had exploded out from the skies with a reverberating echo. The loud voice had angered Ming Dong. Who the fuck is that to be so aggressive sounding? A cold smile appeared on Jian Chen's own face. Stay here, I'll go out to greet them myself. As soon as he spoke, a single hole had suddenly appeared on the top of the roof, revealing the bright azure skies beyond it. Not even a second later, Jian Chen had already disappeared from his bed into the skies. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.